She stood there, the last one left. The crowd's laughter cut deeper than any knife. 10 brides came to Copper Hollow. 9 were chosen in minutes. Branna Hale remained, heavier, older, unwanted. The auctioneer's voice dripped with contempt as he declared her worthless. Just when humiliation became unbearable, hooves thundered into the square. A mountain of a man, half legend, half nightmare, pointed one thick finger at her. "I'll take that one." The town went silent. No one understood why the beast chose the reject. But in the wilderness ahead, Branna would discover that being unwanted in town meant nothing compared to being valued where it mattered. This is a story of fire, survival, and 2 broken souls who refused to stay broken. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and let's begin. The wooden platform creaked under Branna Hale's weight, though it had held 9 other women without complaint. She noticed. She always noticed the small cruelties, the ones people pretended weren't intentional. The sun hammered down on Copper Hollow's main square, turning the afternoon into a furnace. Dust hung in the air like a curtain no one bothered to draw back. Branna stood with her hands folded in front of her worn gray dress, trying to make herself smaller, a skill she'd perfected over 32 years of disappointing people just by existing. Around her, the square buzzed with the aftermath of selection. 9 mail-order brides had arrived on the morning stage, and 9 had been claimed within the first hour. Claimed. The word tasted like rust in her mouth. But that's what they were here for, wasn't it? To be chosen like horses at auction, except horses usually got their teeth checked first. The other women were younger, most of them. Prettier, all of them. Their waists cinched tight in traveling dresses that actually fit. Their faces smooth and hopeful. Branna had watched them pair off with miners, merchants, a banker's son who looked barely old enough to shave, watched the shy smiles, the nervous handshakes, the promises whispered like prayers. Now those women stood with their new husbands at the square's edge, watching, waiting to see what would happen to the one nobody wanted. "Well," Marshall Dawson scratched his gray beard, looking anywhere but at Branna. He'd organized this whole affair, brought the brides in from Kansas City with promises of good men and fresh starts. "I suppose we could—" "Just say it," Branna said quietly. Her voice carried better than she'd intended. "Nobody wants the fat one." A ripple of uncomfortable laughter moved through the crowd. Branna's cheeks burned, but she kept her chin level. Shame was an old companion. She'd learned to walk with it without stumbling. "Now, Miss Hale," the marshal started, his tone dripping with the kind of pity that felt worse than contempt. "That's not exactly—" "It's exactly that." This voice came from the crowd. A shopkeeper named Dutch, red-faced and mean with it. "We paid good money for brides, not broodsos. Look at her. What man wants to wake up next to that every morning?" More laughter, louder now. Branna's fingernails bit into her palms. She'd been called worse, survived worse. This was just another Tuesday in a life full of them. "Maybe she could work in the kitchen at the boarding house," someone suggested. "God knows Mrs. Chen could use the help." "Kitchen's where she belongs," another voice agreed. "Eating up the profits, most likely." The jokes came faster now, each one trying to top the last. Branna stood there and took it, because what else could she do? Get back on the stage? Return to Kansas City and the brother-in-law who'd looked at her like a problem to be solved? She'd sold everything she owned for the ticket west, for the chance at something different. She almost laughed. Same humiliation, just a different landscape. "Gentlemen, please." Marshall Dawson raised his hands, but his heart wasn't in it. He looked at Branna the way people looked at 3-legged dogs. Sorry for them, but not sorry enough to actually help. Miss Hale came here in good faith, same as the others. Someone must be willing— "I'll give you $5 for her." The voice belonged to a grizzled miner named Kemp, who smiled with 3 teeth and bad intentions. "Use her for washing and such. Keep her fed, long as she earns her keep." Branna's stomach turned, washing and such. Everyone knew what such meant. "Now hold on," the marshal said, finally finding something like conviction. "This is a marriage arrangement, not a—" "Marriage?" Dutch barked out a laugh. "Who'd marry that? Kemp's being generous, offering work. More than she deserves, rolling in here like she's got any right to be choosy." The crowd murmured agreement. Branna felt the moment shifting, felt the town deciding her fate the way towns always did, quick and mean, with all the warmth of a winter wind. She should say something, should defend herself, argue, fight back. But the words stuck in her throat like stones. What could she say that would matter? That she could read and write and keep accounts? That she'd run her late father's dry goods store for 6 years after he died, kept it profitable until her sister's husband took over and ran it into the ground? That she had value beyond the meat on her bones? None of that mattered here. Here, she was just the leftover. The one nobody wanted. $5 is my offer, Kemp said again, louder. Take it or leave it, Marshal. Otherwise, you're stuck with her. The Marshal's mouth worked soundlessly. He looked at Branna, and she saw it in his eyes. He was going to accept. He was going to hand her over to Kemp like a piece of used furniture, just to be rid of the problem. Branna's vision blurred. She wouldn't cry. She'd promised herself that much. Whatever happened, she wouldn't give them the satisfaction of tears. Then the horses came. The sound reached them first. Hoofbeats, heavy and fast, coming from the North Trail. The crowd turned, conversations dying. Visitors were common enough in Copper Hollow, but something about these hoofbeats felt different, purposeful, dangerous. 2 horses burst into the square, and the crowd scattered like startled chickens. The first horse was a massive gray gelding that looked like it could pull a plow through solid rock. The second was a pack mule, loaded with supplies and something wrapped in canvas that might have been furs. But nobody looked at the animals for long. The rider commanded attention the way Storms did, not asking for it, just taking it as his due. He was big. Not tall and lanky big, but built like something carved from the mountain itself. His shoulders strained against a leather coat that had seen hard years. Dark hair fell past his collar, shot through with silver at the temples. His beard was trimmed close, framing a face that looked like it had been in a few fights and won most of them. But it was his eyes that made Branna's breath catch. Even from the platform, she could see them, pale gray, like creek water over stone. They swept across the square with an expression that suggested he found the whole scene vaguely disappointing. "Vorn," someone whispered. The name moved through the crowd like a contagion. Silas Vorn. Branna had heard the name. Everyone had. The mountain man who lived somewhere up in the high country, who came to town twice a year for supplies and nothing else. The stories varied. He'd killed a man in Denver, fled from the law, made a deal with the devil himself. He was crazy, dangerous, best avoided. Looking at him now, Branna believed at least half of it. Silas Vorn dismounted with the kind of easy grace that big men rarely had. He stood there for a moment, taking in the scene, the platform, the brides, the crowd, Branna standing alone in her shame. His eyes settled on her and didn't move. Branna's heart hammered. She couldn't read his expression. Disgust? Amusement? That predatory interest she'd learned to fear in men like Kemp? "Heard you had brides," Silas said. His voice was low, rough from disuse. "Heard right, seems like. Mr. Vorn." The marshal recovered first, moving forward with his hand extended. Silas looked at it like he wasn't quite sure what to do with it. The marshal withdrew, clearing his throat. "Yes, well, we did have brides, all spoken for now, I'm afraid. Though if you're looking for that one," Silas pointed at Branna. "I'll take that one." The square went so quiet Branna could hear her own pulse thundering in her ears. "I'm sorry?" The marshal blinked. "Did you say her?" Silas was already pulling a leather pouch from his belt. "The woman on the platform. What's the arrangement?" "Now hold on just a minute." Dutch stepped forward, his face flushed with something Branna couldn't quite name. Anger? Embarrassment? "You can't just... she's not..." "Not what?" Silas's eyes cut to Dutch. Something in that pale gray gaze made the shopkeeper take a step back. "Not for sale?" "Thought that's what this whole show was about." "It's a marriage arrangement," the marshal said quickly. "Respectable unions between..." "Fine. Marriage, then." Silas dumped the pouch into the marshal's hands. Gold coins spilled out, more than Branna had seen in one place in her entire life. "That cover it?" The marshal stared at the money, then at Silas, then at Branna. "This is... Mr. Vorn, are you certain? There might be other opportunities. If you waited for the next... What, Patrice, she... Don't want to wait. Want her." Silas's tone suggested the conversation was over. "We doing this or not?" Branna found her voice. "I haven't agreed to anything." Every head turned toward her. She hadn't meant to speak, but the words were out now. Might as well finish them. You're choosing me? She looked at Silas directly, trying to find the trick, the angle, the cruelty hiding behind the offer. Why? Silas studied her for a long moment. You want the truth or something pretty? Truth. You look like you can work, like you won't break the first time things get hard. He gestured at the other brides, still clustered with their new husbands. They look soft. Pretty, maybe, but soft. Where I live, soft gets you killed. It wasn't flattering, but it was honest, and Branna had precious little experience with honest. Where do you live? Thunder Ridge. High country, north of here. About a day's ride. Alone? For now. Branna looked around the square, looked at Kemp with his 3 teeth and his washing and such, looked at Dutch, who'd called her a brood sow, looked at the 9 happy couples who'd found each other while she stood alone, as always, looked at the rest of her life spreading out before her like a desert road, dry, endless, leading nowhere good. Do I have to decide right now? No. Silas's answer surprised her. But I'm leaving in 10 minutes, with or without you. Your choice. A choice. When was the last time anyone had given her that? If I say yes, Branna said slowly, and I don't like it up there, if things aren't what you say, can I leave? Door's not locked. You want to go, you go. Silas met her eyes. But the trail's dangerous alone. You'd want to think hard before walking it by yourself. Honest again, not promising her safety or happiness or anything except the truth of the situation. I need a minute, Branna said. Silas nodded and walked over to his horse, checking the saddle with his back to her, giving her space. That small courtesy nearly undid her. The marshal climbed onto the platform, his voice low. Miss Hale, you don't have to do this. Vorn's not, well, he's not quite right. Lives like an animal up there. You'd be isolated, completely dependent on him. It's not safe. And Kemp's offer was safe? Branna asked. The marshal had the grace to look ashamed. I wouldn't have let him. I would have found something else. Like what? The boarding house kitchen? Working until I die in some stranger's home, grateful for scraps? Branna shook her head. At least this way I'd have my own name on something. Mrs. Vorn has a better ring than that fat kitchen girl. He could be dangerous. So could starving. So could going back to Kansas City and begging my brother-in-law for a corner of his house. Branna looked at Silas, who was now adjusting the pack mule's load, completely unconcerned with the drama playing out behind him. At least he was honest about what he wanted. And what's that? Someone who won't break. Branna almost smiled. Well, I've been bent about as far as a person can go. If I haven't broken yet, I'm probably pretty sturdy. The marshal sighed. It's your life, Miss Hale. Yes, Branna said quietly. It is. She climbed down from the platform on her own, refusing the marshal's offered hand. Her legs shook, but she made them steady. She'd learned that too, how to move when your body wanted to collapse. Silas turned as she approached. Decision made? I'll go with you, on one condition. His eyebrow rose. Condition? You don't touch me until I say you can. Branna's voice came out stronger than she felt. I know what the arrangement is. I know what marriage means, but I need time. I need to know you're not, that you won't force you. Silas finished the sentence she couldn't. All right. That's it? All right. All right. He moved to the pack mule, rearranging some of the load. Never saw the point in forcing. Ruins the whole thing. Branna had expected argument, negotiation, the kind of male anger she'd learned to navigate. This casual agreement left her off balance. Do you have belongings? Silas asked. A trunk, at the boarding house. Get it. Meet me back here. Branna hurried across the square, feeling dozens of eyes on her back. She heard the whispers start before she'd gone 10 feet. Poor thing, walking into disaster. Give her a week before she comes running back. Let them talk. They'd been talking about her for years. Her trunk wasn't heavy. Everything she owned fit inside with room to spare. 1 good dress, 2 work dresses, unmentionables. Her mother's Bible, though she rarely opened it. A few books she'd managed to keep when the store was sold. When she returned to the square, Silas had somehow strapped the trunk to the pack mule without making the load unstable. He worked with the easy competence of someone who'd packed 1,000 loads and knew exactly how weight distributed. "Can you ride?" he asked. "Not well. You'll learn." He gestured to a smaller mare tied behind the mule, a roan with gentle eyes. "That's Rosie. She's older, steady, won't run off with you." "Where did you—" "Bought her from the livery while you were getting your things." Silas checked the cinch on Rosie's saddle. "Figured you'd need your own horse. Can't ride double all the way to Thunder Ridge." He'd thought of her comfort. The realization made something tight in Branna's chest loosen, just a fraction. "Thank you." Silas grunted, which she was learning might be his version of "you're welcome." The marshal approached with a paper. "Mr. Vorn, there's the matter of the marriage contract. We'll need to make it official, with witnesses and—" "Do it later." Silas was already mounting his gray gelding. "Send it to the ridge when it's ready." "But the legalities—" "Later." Silas looked down at Branna. "You ready?" Was she? Ready to leave the only civilization she'd known for a stranger's mountain cabin? Ready to tie her life to a man she'd met 10 minutes ago? Ready to choose the unknown over the certainty of misery? "Yes," Branna said, and meant it. Mounting Rosie took 3 tries and wasn't graceful, but she managed. The saddle felt precarious, the ground too far away. Her dress bunched awkwardly around her legs. Silas watched with what might have been patience. Feet in the stirrups, back straight, hold the reins loose. She knows where to go. Branna adjusted, feeling ridiculous and terrified and strangely excited all at once. "Follow me," Silas said. "We've got daylight to burn." He turned his horse toward the north trail, and the crowd parted like he was Moses at the Red Sea. Branna followed on Rosie, who did indeed seem to know where to go, falling into step behind the pack mule without fuss. As they left the square, Branna heard Dutch's voice one last time. "Give her 3 days before she's begging to come back." Laughter followed them out of town. Branna didn't look back. Whoa. The trail climbed steadily from the start, leaving Copper Hollow's dusty streets behind for something wilder. Pine trees crowded close on both sides, their branches blocking the harsh afternoon sun. The temperature dropped with each foot of elevation, and Branna found herself grateful for the shade. Silas rode ahead, silent. He didn't check on her or ask if she needed to stop, just rode at a steady pace that ate up the miles without being punishing. Rosie followed the pack mule like they'd done this 100 times before. Maybe they had. Branna let the mare handle the navigation and tried to get comfortable in the saddle. After an hour, her thighs were screaming. After 2, she discovered muscles she didn't know she had. But she bit her tongue and kept riding. Silas had said soft wouldn't survive. She'd show him sturdy. The sun was starting its descent when Silas finally raised a hand, signaling a stop. They'd reached a small clearing with a creek running through it, the water clear and cold-looking. "We'll rest here," Silas said, dismounting. "Water the horses." Branna tried to copy his easy dismount and nearly fell. Her legs had turned to jelly somewhere in the last hour. She grabbed Rosie's saddle to steady herself, breathing hard. Silas appeared at her elbow. "First time's always rough. Walk it off." He led his gelding to the creek, leaving Branna to either collapse or prove him right about being sturdy. She walked. It hurt. Everything hurt. But she walked the clearing's perimeter until her legs remembered how to function. By the time she led Rosie to water, Silas had already tended to both his horse and the mule. "Drink," he told Branna, gesturing to the creek. "It's clean this high up." She knelt at the water's edge, cupping her hands. The creek was so cold it made her teeth ache, but it tasted better than anything she'd had in weeks. She drank until the hollow feeling in her stomach eased. When she turned around, Silas was holding out something wrapped in cloth. "Eat," he said. Branna unwrapped it carefully, jerky and hardtack, nothing fancy. But her stomach growled loud enough that Silas almost smiled. Almost. They ate in silence. Branna kept expecting him to speak, to ask her questions or make demands, or explain what he expected from this arrangement. But he just ate his own rations and stared at the creek like it held answers to questions she couldn't hear. Finally, Branna couldn't stand it anymore. "How much farther?" "Another 4 hours, maybe 5. Silas glanced at her. "You hurting?" "I'm fine." "You're lying, but I respect the effort." He stood brushing crumbs from his pants. We'll take it slower. No point breaking you before we get there. I thought you said I looked like I wouldn't break. Don't mean I should test it the first day. Silas gathered the reins of his horse. Ready? No. Yes. They rode on as the shadows lengthened. The trail grew steeper, narrower. In places, Branna could see down the mountainside to valleys below, the drop-off making her heart race. But Rosie never faltered, picking her way along the path like she'd done it 1,000 times. The sun touched the horizon when the cabin came into view. Branna had expected something crude, 4 walls and a roof, maybe a single room with dirt floors. What Silas had built was something else entirely. The cabin sat in a natural hollow, protected on 3 sides by the mountain itself. It was larger than she'd imagined, built from massive logs that looked like they could withstand anything. A stone chimney rose from one end, and the windows, actual glass windows, caught the last light of day. A porch wrapped around the front, solid and level. Firewood was stacked neatly under the overhang, enough to last through multiple winters. Beyond the cabin, she could see a small barn, a chicken coop, and what might have been a root cellar built into the hillside. "This is your home?" The words came out before Branna could stop them. "Our home now. If you're staying." Silas dismounted and began unloading the mule. "Barn's there. Rosie knows her stall." Branna slid off her mare, her legs protesting every movement. She led Rosie to the barn, which was as well built as the cabin. Inside, 2 other horses nickered a greeting. The stalls were clean, fresh hay already laid out. She got Rosie settled, copying what she remembered from watching stable hands in Kansas City. It wasn't graceful, but the mare didn't seem to mind. When Branna emerged, Silas had already carried her trunk onto the porch. He stood in the doorway, looking at her. "You should know something before you come inside," he said. Branna's stomach tightened. Here it came, the truth, the trap, the thing he'd been hiding. "There's 2 rooms," Silas continued, "mine and yours. Door between them has a lock on your side. I put it there 3 years ago, thinking someday I might... Well, doesn't matter. Point is, you can lock it. I won't get mad. I won't break it down. Whatever happens between us happens because we both choose it. Clear?" Branna stared at him. "You built a separate room 3 years ago?" "Seemed right." "For a wife you didn't have?" "For whoever came. If anyone came." Silas shifted his weight, uncomfortable with the conversation. "Look, you want to come inside or stand here asking questions about carpentry?" Branna followed him into the cabin. The interior stole her breath. She'd expected darkness, animal pelts, maybe a few rough shelves. Instead, lamplight revealed a main room that was almost civilized. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, already laid with wood for lighting. A table and chairs sat near the window, handcrafted but sturdy. Bookshelves lined the far wall, filled with more volumes than she'd seen outside a proper library. The floor was smooth wood, not dirt. Rugs, actual woven rugs, covered the high traffic areas. Pots and pans hung from hooks near a cast-iron stove. A rocking chair sat by the fireplace, a blanket draped over its back. "You read?" Branna moved toward the bookshelves without meaning to, drawn by the sight of so many books. "When I can't sleep, which is often." Silas was lighting lamps, bringing the room into fuller light. "You're welcome to any of them." Branna touched the spines reverently. Shakespeare, Dickens, Darwin, books on geology and astronomy and agricultural techniques. A complete set of encyclopedias that must have cost a fortune to haul up the mountain. "This isn't..." She turned to look at him. "People in town said you lived like an animal." "People in town say a lot of things." Silas moved to the stove, checking the firebox. "Most of it's horseshit." "Why do you let them think that?" "Keeps them from visiting." He straightened, meeting her eyes. "I don't like company much. Present situation accepted." "Why did you come for a bride then? If you don't like people?" Silas was quiet for a long moment. "Winter's long up here. Quiet gets heavy after a while. Thought maybe..." He shrugged. "Thought maybe someone to talk to wouldn't be the worst thing." It was the most honest thing anyone had said to Branna in years. No poetry about love or companionship, just a man admitting he was lonely and didn't want to be anymore. "I can talk," Branna said softly. "Noticed." Silas almost smiled again. "Your room's through there. I put fresh linens on the bed yesterday, case anyone actually came home with me." Wash basins filled. There's a tub behind the changing screen if you want a bath, but the water needs heating. Branna looked at the door he'd indicated. Her door. Her room. Her lock. I'll need to make dinner, Silas continued. You hungry or too tired? Both. Bath first then. I'll get water heating. He moved toward the stove with the easy competence of someone who'd cooked 1,000 meals alone. Take your time. Branna picked up her trunk, lighter without books, and carried it to her room. The space was smaller than the main room, but still larger than any bedroom she'd had since leaving her father's house. A real bed, not a cot, with a quilt that looked hand-stitched, a dresser with a mirror, a chair by the window, a small bookshelf, currently empty, waiting for her to fill it. And there, on the connecting door to Silas's room, a sliding bolt lock, solid iron, positioned exactly where she could reach it from bed. He'd thought of everything. Branna locked the door, then unlocked it, then locked it again. Testing. Making sure it worked. Making sure he told the truth. It held solid. She sat on the bed and let herself shake. Let the enormity of what she'd done crash over her like a wave. She'd left everything familiar and ridden into the wilderness with a stranger who might be kind or might be something else entirely. But he'd given her a lock, and books, and a room of her own. It was more than Kansas City had offered. Bitch. The bath was heaven. Silas had heated enough water that Branna could actually submerge, washing away the dust and sweat and fear of the last 24 hours. She scrubbed until her skin turned pink, then soaked until the water cooled. When she emerged, wrapped in the clean robe she'd packed, the smell of cooking meat made her stomach growl loud enough to embarrass her. She dressed quickly in her simplest work dress and braided her damp hair. Her reflection in the mirror showed the same face she'd always had, too round, too plain, marked by 32 years of being told she wasn't quite right. But her eyes looked different, brighter, maybe. Or just less defeated. Branna unlocked her door and stepped into the main room. Silas had set the table for two. Venison steak, fried potatoes. Something green that might have been wild onions. He'd even put out cloth napkins, like this was a proper dinner and not just two strangers eating in awkward silence. Sit, he said, carrying the food to the table. It's hot. Branna sat, waited for him to say grace or make a toast or do something to mark the occasion. Instead, Silas just picked up his fork and started eating. After a moment, Branna did the same. The venison was perfect, seasoned with herbs she couldn't name, cooked through but still tender. The potatoes were crispy on the outside, soft inside. The wild onions added a sharp bite that made everything else taste better. This is good, Branna said. Really good. Thanks. Silas didn't look up from his plate. Had a lot of practice cooking for one. They ate in silence for a while. Not uncomfortable, exactly. Just quiet. Like two people who hadn't figured out how to be around each other yet. Finally, Branna put down her fork. Can I ask you something? Probably won't stop you if you do. Why me? Really? Not that line about not being soft. The real reason. Silas chewed slowly, considering. You looked angry. What? Standing up there on that platform? Everyone laughing. You looked angry, not sad, not ashamed like maybe you should have been. He met her eyes. I like that. Anger's useful. Sadness just weighs you down. Branna thought about that. I was angry, am angry, have been for years. At what? Everything. Everyone. Myself, mostly. The words came easier than she'd expected. Maybe because Silas was watching her like he actually wanted to hear the answer. I'm angry that I'm not pretty enough, not small enough, not quiet enough. I'm angry that I have to apologize for taking up space. I'm angry that my best option was standing on a platform in the middle of nowhere, hoping some stranger might find me useful enough to take home. You're angry you had to leave Kansas City? I'm angry I had nowhere else to go. Silas nodded. Makes sense. That's it? Makes sense? What do you want me to say? That you're wrong to be angry? You're not. World's been shit to you. You get to be mad about it. He stood, gathering their plates. Just don't let it eat you up inside. Anger's good fuel, burns hot. But if you let it run too long, it'll burn the engine out. Branna watched him wash the dishes in a basin, his movements efficient. You talk like someone who's been angry, for a long time. Silas dried the plates carefully. Then I built this place. Anger turned into something useful. Gave me purpose. What were you angry about? Same as you, being something people didn't want. He put the last dish away. Difference is, I stopped caring what they wanted, started caring what I wanted instead. And what do you want? Silas looked at her. Really looked, like he was seeing past her body to something deeper. Peace, he said finally. Quiet. Books when I want them, silence when I don't. Someone to talk to who doesn't lie to make me feel better. He paused. What do you want? No one had asked Branna that question in 10 years. She'd been too busy surviving to think about wanting. I don't know, she admitted. I thought I wanted a husband, a home, normal things. But now, she gestured around the cabin. This doesn't feel normal. But it doesn't feel wrong either. Give it time. Normal's different for everyone up here. Silas moved to the fireplace, kneeling to light the already laid kindling. Flames caught quickly, throwing shadows across his face. I'm going to bed, he said. Long ride tomorrow if you want to see the rest of the property. You don't expect... I expect you're tired. I expect your door's got a lock. I expect we'll figure out the rest as we go. He stood, dusting off his hands. Sleep well, Branna. It was the first time he'd used her name. It sounded strange in his rough voice, but not bad. Good night, Silas. She watched him disappear into his room, the door closing with a soft click. No lock on his side. He'd given her all the control. Branna sat by the fire for a long time, watching the flames dance, thinking about everything that had changed in a single day. Everything she'd left behind, everything waiting ahead. When she finally went to her room, she locked the door out of habit more than fear. Then, on impulse, she unlocked it. She could always lock it later if she needed to, but tonight, in this strange new place with this strange, quiet man, she didn't feel afraid. She felt something that might have been hope. Patod. Branna woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came back. The platform, the ride, the cabin, the unlocked door. She sat up, her body protesting. Every muscle from yesterday's ride made its objections known. Walking to the wash basin took more effort than it should have. In the mirror, her reflection looked less defeated than it had in Kansas City. Or maybe that was just wishful thinking. She dressed and emerged to find Silas at the stove, cooking breakfast with the same quiet competence he'd shown at dinner. Coffee's ready, he said without looking up. Cups are on the shelf. Branna poured herself a cup, black because she didn't see milk or sugar anywhere. The first sip was strong enough to wake every nerve ending. The second sip was better. Sleep all right? Silas asked. Better than I expected. Good. You'll need your strength today. He plated bacon and eggs. Thought I'd show you around, where things are, how things work. That okay? That's fine. They ate breakfast in the same comfortable silence from dinner. Branna was learning that Silas didn't waste words when he didn't need them. After years of forced conversation and empty pleasantries, she found the quiet almost luxurious. After breakfast, Silas led her outside into morning light that made the mountain look like something out of a painting. The sky was so blue it hurt to look at, and the air tasted clean in a way city air never had. Chickens are yours, Silas said, pointing to the coop. They lay good. Eggs are breakfast mostly, but we can trade them in town when we go down, which isn't often. How often? Every few months, sometimes less if the weather's bad. He moved toward the root cellar. We've got stores, dried goods, preserved vegetables, smoked meat, enough to last through winter without resupply. The cellar was cool and dark, lined with shelves holding jars and barrels and crates. Branna saw potatoes, carrots, apples, pickled vegetables, dried beans, more food than she'd seen in one place since her father's store. How do you get all this up here? Grow what I can, hunt what I can't, trade for the rest. Silas picked up an apple, tossing it to her. Try it. The apple was crisp and sweet, better than anything she'd bought in Kansas City. Branna ate it while Silas showed her the spring that fed the cabin's water supply, the smokehouse where he cured meat, the small garden plot where he grew vegetables in summer. Everything was organized, maintained, built to last. This wasn't a rough camp where a man survived season to season. This was a home, established and permanent. How long have you been here? Branna asked. 6 years. Built most of it the first 2. Silas looked around his property with something that might have been pride. Kept improving it after that. Always something to fix or build or make better. Why this spot? High enough that most people won't make the climb. Low enough that winters don't kill you. Water's clean, soil's decent for growing, and, he paused, it's quiet, no one bothering you, no one telling you you're doing it wrong. Branna understood that more than he knew. They walked the property's perimeter, Silas pointing out landmarks and boundaries. The ridge stretched for acres, most of it untouched forest. In the distance, Branna could see higher peaks still capped with snow, despite the summer heat in the valleys below. What's beyond those mountains? She asked. More mountains, then desert, then the ocean, if you go far enough. Silas picked up a stick, breaking it methodically. But that's weeks of travel. This is the edge of the settled territory. Past here, it's just wilderness. Doesn't that worry you? Why would it? Because you're alone. If something happens, I deal with it. Been doing that my whole life. He threw the stick pieces aside. Besides, I'm not alone anymore. Am I? The question hung between them. Branna looked at this man who'd chosen her when no one else would, who'd built a room with a lock because he understood fear, who spoke truth instead of poetry. No, she said quietly, you're not alone anymore. Something shifted in Silas's expression. Not quite a smile, but close enough. Good, he said. Let me show you the barn. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of information. How to feed the horses, where the tools were kept, which trails were safe to walk alone and which weren't, what sounds in the night were normal and which meant danger. By noon, Branna's head was spinning with details, but underneath the overwhelm, something else was growing, a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. She had responsibilities here. Work that mattered, a place where she could be useful without apologizing for her existence. They ate a simple lunch of bread and cheese and jerky, sitting on the porch steps. The view from the cabin was spectacular, miles of forest and mountains stretching to the horizon. It's beautiful, Branna said. It is. Silas bit into his bread. Gets lonely too, though. Beautiful things do. Is that why you wanted a wife? Because you were lonely? Part of it. He chewed thoughtfully. Also practical. 2 people survive better than 1 up here. More hands for work. Someone to watch your back. Someone to talk to when the quiet gets too heavy. That's not very romantic. You want romance. I married the wrong woman. Silas looked at her. You want honesty? I picked right. Branna couldn't argue with that. As the afternoon wore on, clouds began building over the peaks. Silas watched them with narrowed eyes. Storm coming, he said. Probably hit tonight. We should get the animals secured. They worked together, closing shutters and securing anything that might blow away. Branna followed Silas's instructions, learning as she went. Her hands got dirty, her dress got sweaty, and none of it mattered because she was doing something real. By evening, the first drops started falling. Silas lit the lamps while Branna started dinner, or tried to. She'd cooked before, but the cast-iron stove was different from what she'd used in Kansas City. Let me, Silas said, not unkindly. You can learn tomorrow. Tonight you'd probably burn it. He wasn't wrong. She watched him work instead, learning his methods. How he checked the stove's temperature with his hand. How he seasoned the meat. Small things that made the difference between good food and great food. Where did you learn to cook? Branna asked. Necessity. First time I made dinner for myself, I nearly poisoned myself with undercooked pork. Figured I should learn properly if I wanted to live. He stirred something in the pan. Ma used to cook when I was young. Watched her when I could. What happened to her? Fever took her when I was 12. Pa followed 6 months later. Different kind of fever, the kind that comes in a bottle. Silas's voice was flat, factual. After that, I was on my own. I'm sorry. Long time ago. He plated the food. Sit, eat. Dinner was another quiet affair, but Branna was starting to appreciate the silence. It felt like choice rather than awkwardness. 2 people comfortable enough not to fill every moment with noise. Outside, the storm intensified. Rain hammered the roof, and thunder rolled across the mountains. But inside, the cabin was warm and dry and solid. I should tell you something, Branna said as they washed dishes together. About Kansas City. About why I left. You don't have to. I want to. She dried a plate carefully. My father died 3 years ago. Left me the store. I kept it running, kept it profitable. Then my sister's husband decided a woman shouldn't be running a business. He took it over, said it was for my own good. Ran it into the ground in 18 months. What did you do? Nothing. I had no legal right to stop him. The store was in my father's name, and married men inherit before unmarried daughters. Branna's hands tightened on the towel. I watched him destroy everything my father built. Then he turned around and blamed me. Said I'd probably been running it into the ground all along, and he was just finishing what I started. That's horse shit. That's the law. Branna set down the plate. So when the store failed and my sister needed the room I'd been living in for her new baby, they suggested I might be happier elsewhere. Saw an advertisement for mail-order brides. Seemed like the best of bad options. Silas was quiet for a long moment. Your brother-in-law's an idiot. Probably. Definitely. Anyone who'd waste your skills running a business is too stupid to deserve them. He dried his hands. You know numbers? Yes. And inventory, and customer relations, and bookkeeping. Good. I've been doing the accounts for this place in my head. Having them written proper would be helpful. He gestured to a small desk in the corner that Branna hadn't noticed before. Books are in the drawer. You want to look them over tomorrow? See what needs organizing? It was such a small thing. But it meant he valued what she could do, valued her brain, not just her labor. I'd like that, Branna said. Good. Silas moved toward his room. Storm will probably run all night. If you need anything, just knock. I will. He paused at his door. Branna? Yes? Glad you're here. In case I didn't say it. Before she could respond, he was gone, door closed behind him. Branna stood in the main room listening to rain drum the roof. She thought about her brother-in-law's smug face, about the platform in Copper Hollow, about all the times she'd been told she was too much or not enough. None of that mattered here. Here, she had a place, a purpose, a man who said he was glad she was here and sounded like he meant it. Branna went to her room and closed the door, looked at the lock for a long moment, left it unlocked. Whatever came next, she'd face it without hiding. For the first time in years, that didn't feel like a risk. It felt like a choice. The storm blew itself out by dawn, leaving the mountain washed clean and smelling of pine. Branna woke to sunlight streaming through her window and the sound of Silas already moving around in the main room. She dressed quickly, her body still protesting yesterday's work, but less violently than before. When she emerged, Silas had coffee ready and was packing supplies into a leather satchel. Morning, he said. Thought we'd walk the upper trails today. Show you the rest of the ridge. All right. Branna poured coffee, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. How far? Few miles. Nothing too rough. He glanced at her. You up for it? I'm up for it. They set out after breakfast, following a trail that wound through dense forest. The air was crisp and cool, still holding on to night's chill. Birds called overhead, and somewhere in the distance, Branna heard running water. Silas walked ahead, moving with the easy confidence of someone who knew every root and rock. Branna followed, watching where he stepped, learning the rhythm of mountain walking. You do this often? She asked. Just walk? Most days. Checking traps, looking for game, making sure nothing's moved, and where it shouldn't. He held a branch back so she could pass. Gets me out of my head, too. Thinking too much in one place makes you crazy. What do you think about? Same things everyone thinks about. What I'm doing, why I'm doing it, whether any of it matters. He shrugged. Usually decide it doesn't matter if it matters, long as I'm doing it anyway. They climbed higher, the trail growing steeper. Branna's breath came harder, but she pushed through. Silas slowed his pace without being asked, giving her time to adjust. After an hour, they broke through the tree line into a clearing that made Branna stop dead. The view stretched for miles, valley after valley, mountain after mountain, all the way to the horizon. The sky was so vast it made her feel small in a way that wasn't frightening, just honest. This is my favorite spot, Silas said quietly. Come here when I need to remember how big the world is. Makes my problems seem smaller. Branna could see why. Standing here, her brother-in-law's betrayal felt distant. The humiliation in Copper Hollow felt like something that happened to someone else. It's perfect, she said. Almost. Silas moved to a rock outcropping, sitting down with his legs dangling over the edge. Sit. I want to tell you something. Branna sat beside him, careful of the drop. Her stomach flipped, looking down, but she forced herself to breathe through it. Silas was quiet for a long moment, staring at the horizon. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, rougher, like the words cost him something. I didn't just come to Copper Hollow for a wife, he said. I came because I'm tired of being alone. Not lonely. Alone. There's a difference. What's the difference? Lonely is missing people. Alone is forgetting how to be around them. He picked up a small stone, turning it over in his hands. I've been up here 6 years. First few years, I went to town regular, got supplies, talked to folks, tried to be part of things. But every time I went down, people looked at me like I was something dangerous, something wrong. Why? Because I'm big, because I'm quiet, because I don't smile enough or talk enough or act the way they think men should act. The stone crumbled under his grip. So I stopped going, stopped trying. Figured if they wanted to think I was a monster, I'd give them what they wanted. Stay up here. Let the stories grow. Branna thought about the whispers in Copper Hollow. The warnings. The fear in people's eyes when Silas rode in. Are you? She asked. Dangerous? Can be. When I need to be. He looked at her directly. But I'm not mean. Not cruel. I don't hurt things for fun. That's the difference people don't understand. What happened in Denver? The stories say you killed a man. Silas's jaw tightened. I did. Branna's breath caught. Why? He was beating a woman in an alley, beating her bad. I pulled him off. He came at me with a knife. I hit him. Once. He fell wrong. The words came out flat, factual. Marshall said it was self-defense, told me to leave anyway. Said me being around made people nervous. So you came here. So I came here, built this place. Thought maybe I could just exist without scaring anyone. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Didn't work. Scared them anyway, just by being myself. Branna understood that feeling better than he knew. Different reasons, same result. I'm not scared of you, she said. You should be. Little bit, anyway. Keeps you careful. I don't want to be careful around you. I want to be honest. She met his eyes. You've been honest with me. I can do the same. Silas studied her face. All right, ask me anything. Do you regret it? Killing that man? No, he would have killed that woman. Maybe others. Silas's voice was certain. I regret that I had to. I regret that it made me into someone people cross the street to avoid. But the actual act? No. I'd do it again. Good. He blinked. Good? Good. Because if you regretted protecting someone, I'd think less of you. Branna pulled her knees up, hugging them. I'm tired of men who won't act when action's needed. My father was like that. Good man, kind man, but when my mother got sick, he just froze. Couldn't decide on doctors, couldn't decide on treatment. By the time he figured out what to do, it was too late. That why you value honesty so much? Because he couldn't face hard truths? Partly. Branna rested her chin on her knees. Also because people lie to me constantly. Tell me I'm fine when I'm not. Tell me things will work out when they won't. Tell me my weight doesn't matter when it's the only thing anyone sees. I'd rather have ugly truth than pretty lies. Then here's an ugly truth. Silas turned to face her fully. This won't be easy. Winter up here is brutal. We'll be snowed in for months. Just you and me and whatever we bring to the table. If you can't stand me by then, you'll be trapped until spring thaw. If I can't stand you, you'll be just as trapped with me. Fair point. He almost smiled. Another truth. I'm not good at talking about feelings. Not good at romance or sweet words or any of that. Best I can do is honest and present. Honest and present is more than most men manage. And one more truth, because you should know before we go any further. Silas's voice dropped. There's silver on this mountain, a lot of it. I found a vein 3 years ago, been mining it slow. That's how I afford the books and the supplies and everything else. It's also why I built that second room with a lock. Branna's stomach tightened. You think someone will come for it? Eventually. Maybe not this year or next. But word gets out, always does. When it does, men will come. And they won't care about property rights or marriage certificates or anything except getting their hands on that silver. Why are you telling me this? Bob, because you deserve to know what you're walking into. This isn't just a quiet life on a mountain. It's sitting on a fortune that other people want. That makes it dangerous. He held her gaze. You can still leave. I'll take you back to Copper Hollow, give you money for a fresh start somewhere else. No hard feelings. Branna looked out at the endless mountains, the wild, beautiful, dangerous country spread before them. Thought about going back to civilization, to cities where people judged her by her waistline and found her wanting. No, she said. No what? No, I'm not leaving. She turned to him. You said you chose me because I looked angry and sturdy. Well, I am. I'm angry at the world that made me feel worthless, and I'm sturdy enough to stay and fight for something that's mine. If men come for your silver, they'll have to go through both of us. Something shifted in Silas's expression, not quite relief, but close to it. All right then, he said, let's get you ready. They spent the rest of the morning talking strategy. Silas showed her the mine entrance, hidden behind a rockfall that looked natural, but wasn't. Inside, the tunnel stretched back into darkness, supported by heavy timbers. I work it careful, Silas explained, lighting a lantern. Take only what I need, shore up everything proper. Silver's not going anywhere. Rather have it last than get greedy and bring the mountain down. The vein glittered in the lamplight, a thick ribbon of ore running through the rock. Branna had never seen raw silver before. It was less shiny than she'd expected, more subtle. How much is here? Enough to make us rich 10 times over. If we could get it all out, which we can't, not alone. Silas ran his hand over the rock. But enough to live comfortable. Buy what we need. Maybe leave something for, He stopped. For what? For whoever comes after, if anyone does. He cleared his throat. Anyway, you know where it is now. If something happens to me, it's yours. I'll write that down proper. Make it legal. Nothing's going to happen to you. Probably not, but probably's not the same as definitely. He led her back toward the entrance. Come on, want to show you the rest. The rest turned out to be an arsenal. Back at the cabin, Silas opened a locked chest in the corner of the main room. Inside were rifles, pistols, ammunition, and things Branna didn't have names for but recognized as weapons. Can you shoot? Silas asked. No. You'll learn, starting today. He pulled out a rifle, checking it with practiced ease. Gun's just a tool. Loud tool, dangerous tool, but still just a tool. Respect it, understand it, it'll serve you well. They spent the afternoon in a clearing behind the cabin, Silas teaching Branna the basics. How to hold the rifle, how to sight down the barrel, how to breathe and squeeze, not pull, the trigger. The first shot nearly knocked her over. The noise was enormous, the kick brutal against her shoulder, but she stayed on her feet. And that was something. Again, Silas said. She shot until her shoulder was one big bruise and her ears rang despite the cotton Silas had given her. She didn't hit much. A few trees, a lot of dirt, nothing resembling the target Silas had set up. But she got better. Marginally. Enough for today, Silas finally said. You're developing bad habits from fatigue. We'll practice again tomorrow. That became their routine. Mornings working the property. Tending animals, maintaining equipment, preparing for winter even though it was still months away. Afternoons shooting, Branna's aim slowly, painfully improving. Evenings cooking together, then reading by firelight while rain or wind battered the cabin. A week passed, then 2. Branna's hands developed calluses. Her shooting improved enough that she could hit a target more often than not. Her body adjusted to the work, growing stronger instead of just sore. And slowly, carefully, she and Silas learned each other. She learned he talked more in the mornings, before the day's work tired him out. Learned he had a dry sense of humor that snuck up on you. Learned he genuinely loved books, could discuss philosophy or science with the same intensity he brought to checking trap lines. He learned she was stubborn, hated admitting when she was tired, and had strong opinions about almost everything. Learned she could do mathematics in her head faster than he could with paper. Learned she sang sometimes while working, old songs from her childhood, her voice surprisingly clear. They didn't touch, not beyond the accidental brush of hands passing tools or sitting too close at the dinner table. The door between their rooms stayed unlocked on both sides, but neither crossed that threshold. Branna didn't mind. This felt right. Building something before rushing into something else. Learning trust before testing it with intimacy. On the 15th day, she found him in the barn, fixing a bridle. The leather had cracked, and he was working oil into it with patient hands. "Can I ask you something?" Branna said from the doorway. "Seems to be your favorite pastime." She smiled. "Why didn't you choose one of the pretty ones? I know what you said about soft and sturdy, but you could have had someone young and beautiful who would have learned not to be soft. Why me specifically?" Silas worked the oil into the leather, not looking up. "You really want to know?" "I really want to know." He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he set down the bridle and met her eyes. "Because when I looked at you, I saw someone who'd been through fire and came out harder, stronger. Someone who knew what it cost to survive and did it anyway." His voice was rough. The others looked hopeful, like they thought marriage would save them, make everything better. But you looked like you'd given up on being saved. You were just trying to make the best of a bad situation. That's what made me attractive? That I'd given up? That's what made you real. Silas picked up the bridle again. I don't want someone who needs saving. Don't want someone who'll break when things get hard. I want a partner. Someone who can stand beside me, not behind me. And you looked like someone who could do that. Branna's throat tightened. I'm not sure I know how to be that person. Neither am I. Figure we'll learn together. He tested the bridle's strength. You regret coming here? No. Do you regret choosing me? No. They looked at each other across the barn, and something unspoken passed between them. Not love, too soon for that, but understanding, recognition, two broken people trying to build something whole. I should get dinner started, Branna said. I'll be in soon. That night, after dinner, Silas pulled out a worn map and spread it on the table. What's this? Branna asked. Trails around the mountain. You should know them, in case you need to leave quick or in case we get separated. He traced routes with his finger. This one goes to Copper Hollow. Takes a day if you push hard. This one heads east, connects to the main road after 2 days. This one north, don't take that one. Leads to nothing but wilderness. Why are you showing me this now? Because I got word today. Dutch sent a message with the supply rider. Silas's jaw tightened. He's telling people about the bride I bought. The fat one I took up to my mountain lair, making it sound like I'm keeping you prisoner, forcing you to do whatever he thinks I'm forcing you to do. Branna's hands curled into fists. That bastard. Normally I wouldn't care. Let people talk. But he's stirring up trouble, getting other men worked up about it, talking about maybe riding up here to check on you, make sure you're all right. I'm fine. I know that, you know that. But they'll come anyway, because Dutch wants them to. And when they get here and see you're not locked in a cellar, they'll be disappointed. Might decide to make trouble just because they came all this way. Branna thought about Dutch's red face, his cruel laughter. What do we do? We prepare. Make sure the cabin's secure. Make sure you can shoot well enough to defend yourself if you need to. Silas folded the map carefully. And we present a united front. Show them you're here by choice, that you're my wife in truth, not just on paper. Something in his tone made her look up sharply. What does that mean? It means when they come, and they will come, they need to see us as a married couple, not two strangers sharing space. He met her eyes. Means they need to believe we're together, all the way together. You want to, Branna's voice caught. You want to consummate the marriage before they arrive. I want them to believe it's already consummated. Big difference. Silas's expression was careful. But yeah, if we're going to sell this, we need to be comfortable around each other. Need to look like husband and wife, not business partners. Branna's heart raced. I'm not ready for that. I know. I'm not asking for that. He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. I'm asking if we can try being closer, sitting together, touching without it being awkward, learning how to be around each other the way married people are. That's all? That's all. Unless you want more. Then we talk about it first. His voice was steady. But I won't touch you without permission. Won't push for anything you're not ready to give. That was the deal. Branna looked at his hand, still hovering near hers. Thought about the door she kept unlocked, about the trust they'd been building, slow and careful. She reached out and took his hand. His fingers were calloused, rough from work, but they were warm, and they closed around hers gently. All right, she said. We'll try. Over the next week, they practiced being married. It felt ridiculous at first. Sitting together on the porch swing Silas had built years ago, their shoulders touching, his arm around her waist when they walked to the barn, her hand on his shoulder when she passed behind his chair. Small touches. Nothing improper. But each one felt enormous. Branna learned the weight of his arm, the heat of his body next to hers, learned that he smelled like wood smoke and soap, and something else she couldn't name but didn't mind. Learned that touching him didn't have to mean anything beyond simple contact. Silas was careful, always letting her set the pace. If she stiffened, he backed off. If she relaxed, he stayed close. Never pushing, never demanding. On the fifth night, they sat together by the fire, his arm around her shoulders. Branna leaned into him without thinking, her head resting against his chest. She felt his surprise in the way his breath caught. "This okay?" she asked. "Yeah." His voice was rough. "This is okay." They stayed like that for an hour, watching flames dance. Not talking, just being together in a way that felt less like practice and more like truth. When Branna finally went to her room, she paused at the door between them. Silas was in his own room, the lamp already lit. "Silas?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for being patient." Through the open door, she saw him turn. "Nothing to thank me for. This is how it should be." Branna closed her door most of the way, but didn't latch it. A compromise, a step forward. She was learning that steps forward could be small and still matter. The trouble came on a Tuesday. Silas spotted them first, riders on the lower trail moving up the mountain. 6 of them, maybe 7. Too many for a social call. "Inside," he said, his voice sharp. "Get the rifle." Branna's hand shook as she loaded the Winchester the way he'd taught her. Through the window, she watched the riders approach, recognized Dutch in the lead, his face set in righteous anger. "Stay back from the windows," Silas ordered. He had his own rifle in hand, standing in the doorway. "Let me talk first." The riders stopped 20 feet from the cabin. Dutch dismounted, but the others stayed in their saddles, hands near their guns. Not drawn, but ready. "Vorn," Dutch called out. "We're here to check on Mrs. Vorn, make sure she's being treated proper." "She's fine," Silas said. "You can go." "Like to hear that from her, if it's all the same to you." Branna moved to the doorway, standing beside Silas, letting them see her, letting them see she wasn't chained or bruised or any of the things Dutch had probably suggested. "I'm fine," she called out. "Now leave." Dutch's eyes narrowed. "You don't look fine. You look tired. Worked too hard. Maybe against your will." "I'm tired because I've been working, because this is a working ranch and I'm part of it. That's what wives do." Branna kept her voice steady. "I'm here by choice. I'm staying by choice. You've checked. Now go." See, that's what a prisoner would say if she was scared. Dutch's smile was ugly. "Maybe we should come inside, have a proper look around." Silas's rifle came up in one smooth motion, not quite pointing at Dutch, but not quite pointing away either. "You're not coming inside," he said quietly. "You're not welcome here. You've seen she's fine. That's all you get." The other riders tensed. Hands moved closer to guns. "Now, Vorn, don't be unreasonable," Dutch said. "We're just concerned citizens looking out for one of our own." "She's not one of yours. She's one of mine." Silas's voice was ice. "And you're trespassing. Leave. Now." For a moment, Branna thought it would turn ugly. Thought guns would clear leather and blood would spill. Then one of the other riders, a younger man Branna didn't recognize, spoke up. "Dutch, she says she's fine. She's standing right there. No marks on her. We should go." "Shut up, Billy." "No, he's right." Another rider, older. "This is stupid. We came to check. We checked. Let's go home." Dutch's face reddened. "You're all fools. Can't you see what's happening here? He's got her so scared she won't speak against him. We should leave," Silas interrupted, "before I decide you're not just trespassing, you're threatening. And I defend my property." The menace in his voice was unmistakable. Branna had never heard him sound like that. Cold, hard, absolutely certain of violence. Dutch heard it too. His hand moved toward his gun. Branna's rifle came up without her thinking about it, barrel pointed directly at Dutch's chest. "Don't," she said. Every eye turned to her. She kept the rifle steady, the way Silas had taught her, breathing even, finger outside the trigger guard, but ready. I'm not a prisoner, Branna said clearly. I'm not scared. I'm not being forced. I'm here because I chose this life over the one waiting for me in your town, where men like you called me a brood sow and laughed while I stood there humiliated, where my only value was measured by my waistline and found wanting. She took a step forward, rifle still raised. Silas gave me a choice. He gave me respect. He gave me a home where I'm valued for what I can do, not judged for what I look like. So no, Dutch. I'm not leaving. I'm not being rescued. And if you reach for that gun, I will shoot you. Silence. Then Billy laughed, short and sharp. Well held, Dutch. She doesn't sound like she needs rescuing. She sounds like she'll shoot you, the older rider agreed. And I'm not dying over your wounded pride. Let's go. They were already turning their horses when Dutch finally backed down, but his eyes promised this wasn't over. You made a mistake, Vorn, he said. Both of you. This isn't finished. It is for today, Silas replied. Don't come back. They watched the riders disappear down the trail, watched until the last horse vanished into the trees and the sound of hoofbeats faded. Only then did Branna lower her rifle. Only then did her hands start shaking. Silas took the rifle gently, setting it aside. Then he pulled her into his arms. She went stiff for a heartbeat, then melted against him. Her whole body trembled, adrenaline and fear draining out all at once. You did good, Silas murmured into her hair. So good. I'm proud of you. Branna clutched his shirt, breathing in his scent, grounding herself in his solid presence. I almost shot him. I know, saw your finger move toward the trigger, but you didn't. You kept control. Would you have shot him? If he'd drawn on you? In a heartbeat. Silas's arms tightened. That's what he doesn't understand. I'll kill to protect what's mine, and you're mine now. By choice, like you said, but still mine. The possessiveness should have frightened her. Instead, it felt like safety. They stood there for a long time, holding each other while the sun moved across the sky, learning what it felt like to be each other's anchor. When they finally pulled apart, Branna's decision was made. Tonight, she said. Silas frowned. Tonight what? Tonight I'm leaving my door open, completely open. If you'd like to... She stumbled over the words, heat rising in her cheeks. I'm ready to be your wife. Properly. His eyes searched hers. You're sure? I'm sure. You've been patient. You've been kind. You protected me without making me feel weak, and I... She took a breath. I want this. Want you. If you want me. Branna. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. I've wanted you since you pointed that rifle at Dutch and didn't flinch. Before that, maybe. Since you decided to trust me even though you had no reason to. Then tonight? Tonight, he agreed. That evening moved slower than any Branna could remember. They went through the motions of dinner, venison stew, cornbread, coffee, but neither of them tasted much. The air between them felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Silas cleared the dishes while Branna pretended to read, the same page blurring before her eyes. She was aware of every sound he made, every movement, the scrape of the pot being washed, water being poured, his footsteps crossing the cabin floor. I'm going to check the barn, he said finally. Make sure everything's locked down proper. After Dutch and his friends, I don't trust we've seen the last of trouble. All right, he paused at the door. Take your time getting ready. No rush on any of this. Then he was gone, leaving Branna alone with her racing thoughts. She went to her room and stared at herself in the mirror. Same face, same body. Still too heavy by every standard she'd been taught to measure herself against. Still not beautiful. But Silas had chosen her anyway, had called her his, had looked at her like she was worth protecting. That had to count for something. Branna washed carefully, changed into the cleanest nightgown she owned, plain white cotton, nothing fancy, and brushed out her hair. It fell past her shoulders in waves, brown shot through with auburn in the lamplight. Her one vanity, the one thing about herself she didn't completely hate. She sat on the bed and waited, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might bruise her ribs. When the cabin door finally opened, she nearly jumped out of her skin. Silas's footsteps crossed the main room, stopped at his own door. She heard him moving around, the sound of water being poured, the rustle of clothing being changed. Then silence. Branna stared at the open door between their rooms. She'd left it wide, no barrier between them. All he had to do was walk through, but he didn't. Minutes passed. The lamp in his room stayed lit, but he didn't appear. Finally, Branna couldn't stand it anymore. She got up and went to the doorway. Silas sat on his own bed, already in sleep clothes, his back against the headboard. He had a book open in his lap, but he wasn't reading, just staring at the page like it held answers he couldn't quite make out. "You're not coming in," Branna said. He looked up. "Didn't want to assume. Just because you said tonight doesn't mean you can't change your mind." "I haven't changed my mind." "Then why are you over there and I'm over here?" "Good question." Branna didn't have a good answer. Just fear, old and deep, that this would somehow go wrong, that she'd disappoint him the way she'd disappointed everyone else. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted. "Neither do I." Silas closed the book, setting it aside. "You think I'm some kind of expert at this? I've been alone on this mountain for 6 years. Before that, I was running from town to town, never staying anywhere long enough to matter to anyone. I know survival. I know work. This?" He gestured between them. "This is new for me too." "But you've been with women before. Not like this. Not where it mattered." He stood slowly, giving her time to back away if she wanted. "Those were just bodies in the dark, scratching an itch. This is different. You're different." "How?" "Because I have to look at you tomorrow morning, and the morning after that, and every morning for the rest of our lives." He took a step closer. "Because if I hurt you or scare you or make you regret this, I have to live with that. Can't just move on to the next town." Branna understood then. He was just as scared as she was, just better at hiding it. "Come here," she said. Silas crossed the threshold into her room, moving slow like he was approaching a skittish horse. Stopped when he was close enough to touch, but wasn't touching yet. "Tell me what you want," he said quietly. "Tell me what you're afraid of. We'll figure it out from there." Branna's throat tightened. "I'm afraid I won't be enough. That you'll touch me and realize you made a mistake. That my body will disgust you." "Branna, let me finish." She forced the words out. "I've never been with a man, never been wanted that way. My whole life, people have looked at me like I was wrong somehow. Too much of the things they didn't want, not enough of the things they did. And I'm scared that when you finally see me, really see me, you'll look at me the same way." Silas reached out slowly, giving her time to pull back. When she didn't, he cupped her face in his hands. They were rough, calloused, warm. "I've been seeing you for weeks now," he said. "Watching you work, watching you learn to shoot, watching you stand up to Dutch with a rifle in your hands and fire in your eyes. You think I don't know what you look like? That's different than—" "It's not different. It's you. All of you is you." His thumb brushed her cheek. "I'm not going to lie and tell you I don't see your body. I do. I see every part of you. And none of it makes me want you less." "How can you say that when you haven't even—" "Because wanting isn't just about skin. It's about who you are when things get hard, how you face fear, how you keep going even when everything tells you to quit." His eyes held hers. "You're brave and stubborn and smart as hell. You make me laugh without trying. You don't flinch when I'm angry or sulking or being an ass. That's what makes me want you. The rest is just the package it comes in." Branna wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly it hurt. "Show me," she whispered. Silas kissed her then, soft and careful. Nothing demanding or forceful. Just his lips on hers, warm and sure. Branna had been kissed before. Quick stolen moments behind her father's store. Boys trying to prove something. Those had been wet and awkward and forgettable. This was different. This was Silas taking his time, learning the shape of her mouth, waiting for her to respond. She kissed him back, uncertain at first, then with more confidence. Her hands found his shoulders, solid under her palms. His arms came around her waist, pulling her closer. The fear didn't disappear, but it got quieter, drowned out by the feeling of being held like she mattered. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Silas rested his forehead against hers. "Still scared?" he asked. "Terrified." "Good. Me too." He smiled, and it transformed his face. "Means we're doing something that matters." He kissed her again, deeper this time. Branna felt the world tilt, felt something hot and urgent uncurl in her stomach. His hands moved to her hair, tangling in the waves, and she made a sound she'd never made before. Half gasp, half moan. Silas pulled back, eyes dark. You can still change your mind any time. Just say stop and I stop. I swear it. I don't want to stop. Thank God, he breathed and kissed her like he meant it. What happened next wasn't smooth or practiced or anything like the romance novels Branna had read in secret. It was awkward, fumbling with buttons and laces. It was her nightgown catching on her hips and both of them laughing, nervous and breathless. It was Silas going still when he finally saw her, just looking, until she couldn't stand it anymore and covered herself with her hands. Don't, he said, gently pulling her hands away. Don't hide from me. I don't look like, you look like my wife. That's all that matters. He kissed her shoulder, her collarbone, the hollow of her throat. You're beautiful, Branna. I know you don't believe it, but you are. She wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons he was wrong, but his hands were on her skin, careful and reverent, and the words died unspoken. He undressed slowly, letting her look. His body was what she'd expected, all muscle and scars, marked by years of hard living. A puckered line across his ribs, burns on his forearm, the faded remnants of old wounds. You've been hurt, she said, touching the scar on his ribs. Knife fight in Denver, different from the one I told you about. He caught her hand, kissing her knuckles. Don't look at those. Look at me. She did. Saw heat in his eyes and hunger, but also something gentler, something that looked like tenderness. They moved to the bed together, and Silas took his time. Touched her everywhere, learning her body like he'd learned the mountain trails, patient, thorough, committing everything to memory. When she tensed, he slowed. When she relaxed, he continued. Talk to me, he murmured against her skin. Tell me what you like. I don't know what I like. Then we'll figure it out together. It hurt at first, sharp and uncomfortable. Branna bit her lip to keep from crying out, but Silas stopped immediately. Breathe, he said. Just breathe. We'll go slow. He was true to his word, moved with aching slowness, giving her body time to adjust. Whispered things in her ear, some reassuring, some that made her blush even in the lamplight. Kissed her until the pain faded into something else. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't some magical transformation, but it was real and honest. And by the end, Branna understood why people wrote poems about this, why they risked everything for it. Not because of the physical sensation, though that was better than she'd expected, but because of the intimacy, the vulnerability. Two people seeing each other completely and choosing not to look away. After, they lay tangled together, sweat cooling on their skin. Branna's head rested on Silas's chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. You okay? He asked. Yes. You? Better than okay. His hand stroked her hair, gentle. That was... You were... I was what? Perfect. You were perfect. Branna laughed, the sound surprising her. I was awkward and nervous, and I didn't know what I was doing. Perfect, Silas repeated firmly. Don't argue with me about this. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, the lamp still burning low. Branna's last thought before sleep took her was that she'd never felt safer in her life. She woke to gray dawn light and the sound of horses. Too many horses. Silas was already up, pulling on his pants with quick, efficient movements. His face was grim. How many? Branna asked, reaching for her dress. Can't tell yet, more than 6. He grabbed his rifle from where it leaned against the wall. Get dressed. Get armed. This isn't a social call. Branna's hand shook as she laced her dress, but she got it done. Grabbed her own rifle and checked the load the way Silas had taught her. Through the window, she counted riders. 8. No, 10. All armed. Dutch was in the lead again, but this time he'd brought serious men. Hard-faced miners and drifters who looked like they'd kill for $1 and not lose sleep over it. Vorn, Dutch's voice carried through the morning air. We need to talk. Silas opened the door, rifle in hand. Branna stood behind him, her own weapon ready. Nothing to talk about, Silas called back. I told you not to come back. Things have changed. We've been asking around, talking to people. Turns out you've got more than just a wife up here. You've got silver. Lots of it. Dutch's smile was ugly. Now, we figure that silver's on public land, which means it belongs to whoever can claim it, and we're here to claim it. This is private property. I have the deed. Deed don't mean much when 10 armed men say otherwise. Dutch gestured to his companions. Here's how this is going to work. You're going to show us where the silver is. We're going to take what we want. And maybe we let you keep the cabin and the woman, if you cooperate. Silas's laugh was cold. You think I'm going to just hand over my mine because you brought friends? I think you're going to be smart. You're one man. We're 10. Math's pretty simple. Math's more complicated than you think. Silas's voice dropped. Dangerous. Because I'm not just one man. I'm one man who knows this mountain, who's had weeks to prepare for exactly this, who's got nothing to lose if things go bad. Everyone's got something to lose. Dutch's eyes found Branna. Your wife, for instance. The threat was clear. Branna's stomach turned, but she kept her rifle steady. You touch her, you die, Silas said simply. That's not a threat. That's a fact. You might kill me, but I'll put a bullet in you first. I guarantee it. Big talk from a man who's outnumbered. Outnumbered don't mean outmatched. Silas shifted his weight. Last chance, Dutch. Turn around and leave. Don't come back. We'll forget this happened. Can't do that. Too much money at stake. Dutch raised his hand, signaling. Boys, spread out. Cover the... The shot came from the trees. One of Dutch's men jerked in his saddle, clutching his shoulder. Blood bloomed between his fingers. Everyone froze. Next one's in your chest, Dutch, a voice called from the forest. Old, gravelly, unfamiliar to Branna. You and your boys need to think real careful about your next move. Another voice, younger, from a different direction. Got 3 of you in my sights right now. Want me to take them? Hold, the first voice said. Give 'em a chance to be smart. Silas didn't move, but Branna felt tension drain from his shoulders. Took you long enough, McCready. Had to make sure they were serious before I wasted bullets. An old man emerged from the tree line, rifle still aimed at Dutch's group. He was grizzled and lean, with eyes like chips of flint. Silas, you been making friends again? You know me. Social butterfly. 2 more men emerged from different positions, both younger, both armed. They moved like soldiers, practiced and coordinated. Dutch's face had gone white. Who the hell are you? Name's McCready. This is my ridge too, about 5 miles north. These are my nephews, Jake and Tom. The old man spat tobacco. We look out for our neighbors up here, even the antisocial ones. This is none of your business, Dutch tried. You bring 10 armed men to steal a man's property and threaten his wife. That becomes everyone's business. McCready's rifle didn't waver. Now you got a choice. You can leave peaceful, or we can settle this like it needs settling. Your call. The wounded man was still bleeding, swaying in his saddle. His companions looked nervous now, calculating odds that had suddenly turned against them. This isn't over, Dutch said, but he was already turning his horse. Yeah, it is. Silas's voice was iron. Because if I see you on this mountain again, I won't wait for you to draw. I'll shoot you on sight. That's a promise. Dutch wanted to say something else. Branna could see it in his face. But McCready's rifle was still pointed at his chest, and his own men were already retreating. Let's go, Dutch finally muttered. They watched the riders disappear down the trail, the wounded man hunched over and groaning. Watched until the last horse was gone and the sound of hoofbeats faded to nothing. Only then did McCready lower his rifle. Silas Vorn, you are the most stubborn son of a bitch I've ever met, he said. When I heard you'd brought home a wife, I figured you might need watching. Good thing, too. Appreciate it. Silas extended his hand. McCready shook it hard. Branna, this is Robert McCready. Best tracker in 3 counties and the only other person crazy enough to live up here year-round. Ma'am, McCready tipped his hat. Your husband's told me about you. Said you were tough. Pointing a rifle at Dutch like that took spine. You were watching us before? Branna asked. For about a week now, since Silas sent word that Dutch might cause trouble. He gestured to his nephews. Boys spend summers with me. Figured they could use the practice in tactical positioning. The nephews, Jake and Tom, both in their early 20s, nodded at Branna. They had McCready's eyes and steady hands. They'll be back, Jake said. Dutch doesn't strike me as the type to let this go. He's not, Silas agreed, but next time we'll be ready. Next time might be with more men. Or the law. He'll come up with something legal sounding. McCready scratched his beard. You got that deed recorded proper. In Copper Hollow, filed 3 years ago. Might want to make sure it's still filed. Men like Dutch have ways of making paperwork disappear. McCready looked at the cabin, then back at Silas. You need help fortifying this place? I could use it. They spent the day turning the cabin into something defensible. McCready and his nephews knew construction and strategy both. They reinforced the doors, added shutters that could be barred from inside, created firing positions that covered all approaches. Branna worked alongside them, taking orders without complaint. By evening, her hands were blistered and her back ached, but the cabin looked like it could withstand a siege. That should do it, McCready finally declared. Not saying it's perfect, but it's better than it was. I owe you, Silas said. You do, but I'll settle for an invitation to dinner sometime. Gets lonely eating my own cooking. The old man turned to Branna. Mrs. Vorn, you ever need anything, and I mean anything, you send word. I'll come running, that's a promise. Thank you, Branna said, meaning it. After McCready and his nephews left, Branna and Silas stood on the porch watching the sun set. The mountain was quiet again, peaceful. Hard to believe that hours ago, men had been here threatening violence. You never mentioned you had neighbors, Branna said. Didn't think about it. McCready keeps to himself mostly, but he's solid. When things matter, he shows up. Silas put his arm around her shoulders. You did good today. Didn't panic, didn't freeze, just stood there ready to fight. I was terrified. Being terrified and doing it anyway, that's what courage is. He kissed the top of her head. I'm proud of you. They went inside as darkness fell. Branna made dinner while Silas checked the new fortifications one more time. The cabin felt different now, less like a home, more like a fortress. This is going to keep happening, isn't it? Branna asked over dinner. Dutch or men like him, coming for the silver? Probably. Silas didn't sugarcoat it. Word's out now. Might die down, might get worse, hard to say. So what do? We prepare. We stay alert. We trust our friends and shoot our enemies. He met her eyes. And we don't give up what's ours. Not the silver, not this mountain, not each other. You make it sound simple. It is simple, not easy, but simple. Silas reached across the table, taking her hand. I told you this life wouldn't be easy. I told you there'd be danger. You still want it? Branna thought about Kansas City, about her brother-in-law's smug face, about standing on that platform in Copper Hollow, listening to men laugh at her existence. Thought about Silas choosing her. McCready calling her ma'am. Standing with a rifle in her hands, defending something that was hers. I want it, she said. I want this life. With you. Then that's what we'll fight for. The weeks that followed were tense. They took shifts watching the trails, never both sleeping at the same time. Silas taught Branna to shoot with a pistol as well as a rifle. They stockpiled ammunition and supplies, preparing for the possibility of being cut off from town. McCready visited twice, bringing news. Dutch was telling everyone who'd listen that Silas had stolen public land and should be driven off. The marshal in Copper Hollow wasn't taking sides, but he wasn't stopping Dutch either. Law only works when it's convenient, McCready said darkly. Out here, we make our own law. But as summer wore on and no new attacks came, Branna started to relax, started to believe they might actually be safe. She was learning the rhythms of mountain life, the way mornings smelled different depending on which way the wind blew, the sound of elk calling in the evening, the particular quality of light before a storm. She was learning Silas, too, his moods and silences, when he needed to talk and when he needed quiet, how to read his face even when he thought he was hiding everything. And Silas was learning her, figured out she liked her coffee strong and her mornings quiet, that she got sharp when she was tired and needed food more than sympathy, that she could do complex mathematics in her head but got hopelessly lost reading maps. They fought sometimes, sharp, quick arguments about stupid things. Who left the gate unlatched? Whether they needed more firewood? Whose turn it was to feed the chickens? But they always came back together, always talked it through, always went to bed in the same room, wrapped around each other. One morning in late August, Branna woke feeling strange. Her stomach churned and the smell of coffee made her gag. She barely made it outside before she was sick. Silas found her on the porch, wiping her mouth, trying to breathe through the nausea. You all right? He asked, worry clear in his voice. I don't know, I feel... Another wave hit her. She gripped the porch railing, waiting for it to pass. How long have you felt sick? Just this morning. Branna straightened slowly. Probably something I ate. But the next morning it happened again, and the morning after that. On the fourth day, Silas looked at her seriously across the breakfast table. Branna, he said carefully, when was your last monthly? She opened her mouth to answer, then stopped, counted back, counted again. I'm late, she said slowly. I didn't even notice. With everything happening, She looked at him, eyes wide. You think I might be? Might be. He didn't look upset, didn't look angry, just thoughtful. How do you feel about that? Branna put her hand on her stomach, trying to imagine a life growing there. A child, Silas's child, their child. Scared, she admitted, but also happy? Maybe? I don't know. I wasn't planning for this. Neither was I. But that doesn't mean it's bad. Silas came around the table, kneeling beside her chair. We'll figure it out, together, like everything else. A baby makes everything more complicated, more dangerous. Everything's already dangerous. A baby just gives us more reason to fight. He took her hands. You want this? Honest answer. Branna thought about it. Really thought. About bringing a child into this world of silver and violence. About raising a baby on a mountain where trouble could come at any moment. But also about Silas reading to their child from his library. About teaching them to walk these trails, to respect the mountain, to stand up for themselves. About building something that would outlast both of them. Yes, she said. I want this. Silas kissed her, soft and sweet. Then we're having a baby. We might be having a baby. I'm not certain yet. You're certain, I can tell. He rested his hand on her stomach, reverent. We're having a baby. He was right. Within a few weeks, there was no doubt. Branna was pregnant. The news changed everything and nothing. They still worked the property, though Silas started doing the heavy lifting without asking. They still practiced shooting, though he watched her more carefully, ready to step in if she pushed too hard. McCready was thrilled when they told him, slapping Silas on the back hard enough to make him stagger. About damn time this mountain had children on it again, he said. Place has been too quiet too long. But the pregnancy also made them vulnerable in new ways. Branna couldn't move as fast, couldn't fight as hard. And as fall approached and her belly grew, both she and Silas knew that Dutch would notice. He'll see it as weakness, Silas said one night, his hand on her stomach feeling the baby move. He'll think we're easier targets now. Are we? In some ways. But in others, we're more dangerous. His eyes were hard. Because now I've got even more reason to make sure no one gets near this cabin. No one threatens my family. My family. The words made Branna's heart swell. They were a family now. Not just two broken people trying to survive. An actual family with a future and something worth protecting. As autumn turned the aspens gold and the nights grew cold, Branna stood on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains. Her hand rested on her belly, feeling their child move inside her. Somewhere down the mountain, Dutch was planning something. She could feel it in her bones. But up here, in this fortress they'd built together, Branna wasn't afraid. She had Silas. She had McCready and his nephews. She had a rifle she knew how to use and a stubbornness that wouldn't quit. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The mountain was theirs. The silver was theirs. This life was theirs. And she'd be damned if she'd let anyone take it away. The attack came on the first night of October, just as Branna had predicted it would. She'd been restless all day, unable to shake the feeling that something was coming. The mountain felt too quiet, the birds too still. Even the horses in the barn were skittish, ears swiveling at sounds Branna couldn't hear. Silas had noticed too. He'd checked the perimeter 3 times, loaded extra rifles, positioned ammunition at strategic points around the cabin. They ate dinner in near silence, both of them listening to the darkness gathering outside. Maybe I'm wrong, Branna said, though she didn't believe it. Maybe nothing's coming. Something's coming. Silas stood at the window, watching the tree line. Question is when? They got their answer at dusk. The first shot shattered the kitchen window, glass exploding inward. Silas hit the floor, dragging Branna down with him. Another shot punched through the front door, splintering wood. "Stay low," Silas ordered, crawling toward his rifle. "Get to the back room, now." "I'm not leaving you. Branna, I'm not leaving you." She grabbed her own rifle, checking the load with shaking hands. "We do this together, or not at all?" Silas looked like he wanted to argue, but more shots rang out, thudding into the cabin walls. He swore and moved to the window, staying below the sill. "How many?" Branna asked. "Can't tell. At least a dozen, maybe more." He risked a quick look, then ducked as another bullet whined past. "They're spread out. Professional setup. This isn't Dutch's doing alone." "Who then?" "Don't know. Don't care." Silas aimed carefully and fired. Someone screamed in the darkness. "Right now, we just need to survive." The cabin filled with gun smoke and the smell of fear. Branna positioned herself at the side window, the one facing the barn. She could see muzzle flashes in the trees, men moving between cover. She aimed at a flash and fired. Missed. Fired again. This time, someone cursed and the flash disappeared. "Good," Silas said. "Keep them pinned. Don't let them advance." The firefight settled into a brutal rhythm. The attackers would fire, Branna and Silas would return fire, then everyone would reload and do it again. Minutes stretched like hours. Branna's ears rang from the constant gunfire. Her shoulder ached from the rifle's kick, but she kept shooting. A voice called from the darkness, unfamiliar and harsh. "Vorn, give up the mine and we'll let you live." "Go to hell," Silas shouted back. "We got 20 men out here. You can't win." "Then why are you still talking instead of rushing us?" Silas reloaded smoothly. "Maybe because you know I'll kill half of you before you reach the door. That math work for you?" Silence. Then more gunfire, angrier now. Something crashed against the cabin's north wall. Then again, harder. They were trying to break through. "Branna, watch the door," Silas said, moving toward the sound. "Anyone comes through, shoot them." "What are you doing?" "Making sure they don't get in." He grabbed something from under the bed, a large bottle filled with liquid, a rag stuffed in the top. McCready's recipe. He called it insurance. Before Branna could ask what he meant, Silas lit the rag and hurled the bottle through a gap in the shutters. It exploded on impact, flames blooming orange and hungry in the night. Men screamed. The battering at the walls stopped. "That'll slow them," Silas said grimly. "But we're running out of time. They'll figure out we can't cover every angle eventually." As if to prove his point, glass shattered in Branna's room. Someone was coming through the window. Branna spun, rifle up. A man's silhouette filled the window frame, one leg already inside. She fired. The man jerked backward, falling out of sight. She heard him hit the ground, heard his companions cursing. "They're trying the windows," she called to Silas. "I know. We need—" He stopped, listening. "You hear that?" Branna strained her ears. Under the gunfire and shouting, she heard something else. Hoofbeats, coming fast from the north. "McCready," Silas breathed. "That crazy bastard actually came." The hoofbeats grew louder, and suddenly the attacker's gunfire shifted direction. New voices joined the chaos. McCready's gravelly shout, his nephews yelling coordinates like they were still in the army. The siege's rhythm broke. The organized assault turned into confusion as McCready's group hit the attackers from behind. "Now," Silas said, while they're distracted. He threw open the cabin door and charged out, rifle blazing. Branna followed without thinking, her pregnant belly making her movements awkward, but her aim steady. The yard was chaos. Men running, shooting, dying. Fire from Silas's bottle still burned in patches, throwing wild shadows. McCready and his nephews fought with brutal efficiency, cutting down anyone who stood against them. Branna saw a man aim at Silas's back. She shot him before her brain caught up with her hands. He fell, and she felt nothing. No guilt, no horror, just cold certainty that he would have killed her husband. "Behind you!" someone shouted. Branna turned. A huge man rushed at her, knife in hand, too close for her rifle to matter. She swung the weapon like a club, catching him across the jaw. He stumbled, but kept coming. Then Silas was there, slamming into the man with enough force to crack ribs. They went down fighting, and Branna lost sight of them in the darkness and smoke. She fired at another attacker, then another, her world narrowing to muzzle flashes and targets. Load, aim, Fire. Load. Aim. Fire. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory taking over where thought failed. Someone grabbed her from behind, arm around her throat. Brenna dropped her rifle and went for the pistol on her belt. Silas had made her carry it, insisted she practice drawing it, and now she understood why. She pulled the pistol, jammed it backward into her attacker's ribs, and fired. He released her immediately, gasping. She spun and fired again, center mass, the way Silas had taught her. The man fell and didn't get up. Branna stood there, pistol still raised, breathing hard. She'd just killed a man. Shot him twice at point-blank range. She waited for the horror to hit, the guilt, the tears. Nothing came. Just a grim satisfaction that he'd never threaten her family again. "Branna!" Silas's voice cut through the chaos. "Get down!" She dropped without thinking. Gunfire ripped through the space where she'd been standing. Silas returned fire and someone screamed. Then, as suddenly as it started, the shooting stopped. The surviving attackers were running, crashing through the forest in panicked retreat. McCready's nephews fired after them, but McCready himself called them off. "Let them go," the old man shouted. "Save your ammunition." Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of dying fires and the moans of wounded men. Branna stood slowly, looking around at the carnage. Bodies littered the yard. Blood turned the dirt to mud. The cabin's walls were pockmarked with bullet holes, and both windows on the north side were completely destroyed. But they were alive. She was alive. Silas was alive. Silas found her in the smoke and firelight, blood on his face from a cut over his eye. He grabbed her shoulders, checking her for injuries. "Are you hurt? The baby?" "I'm fine. We're fine." Branna's voice shook, adrenaline finally catching up with her. "Is it over?" "For now." He pulled her against him, hard and desperate. "You could have been killed. You should have stayed inside." "So should you." "That's different." "How is that different?" Branna pulled back to look at him. "I'm your wife. I fight beside you. That's how this works." Silas looked like he wanted to argue, but McCready interrupted. "We need to secure the perimeter," the old man said. "Make sure none of them are waiting in the trees. Jake's already doing a sweep, but we should—" He stopped, looking at something past Silas and Branna. They turned. Dutch stood at the edge of the firelight, hands raised. His face was pale, eyes wide with fear. "Don't shoot," he said quickly. "I'm done. I surrender." Silas raised his rifle. "Give me one reason I shouldn't kill you right now. Because I can tell you who's behind this. Who paid for all these men? It wasn't just me." Dutch's words tumbled out fast. "I'm just the front man. The real money came from someone else." "Who?" Branna demanded. "Land developer from Denver. Name's Klein. He heard about the silver, wanted it for himself. Hired me to stir up trouble, make it look grassroots. Said if I helped him get the mine, I'd get a cut." Dutch laughed bitterly. "Stupid me, I believed him." "Where's he now?" Silas asked. "Probably halfway back to Denver, leaving the rest of us to die." Dutch lowered his hands slowly. "Look, I know I got no right to ask for mercy, but I'm telling you everything. Klein's the one you want. He's got money and connections. He'll keep coming until he gets what he wants or you kill him." Silas and Branna exchanged glances. She could see him calculating, deciding whether Dutch was telling the truth or buying time. "McCready," Silas said without looking away from Dutch. "What do you think?" "I think he's telling the truth. Also think he's a coward who'll sell out anyone to save his own skin." McCready spat tobacco. "But he might be useful. If this Klein's as connected as he says, we'll need proof of conspiracy. Dutch here could provide that." "In exchange for what?" Dutch asked hopefully. "In exchange for us not shooting you tonight." Silas lowered his rifle slightly. "You're going to write down everything. Names, dates, payments, everything Klein told you. Then you're going to sign it and swear to it in front of the marshal." "The marshal won't. The marshal will if McCready and I both tell him to. And if you do this, we'll let you leave. Not forgive you, not forget what you did, but we'll let you leave alive." Dutch swallowed hard. "And if I don't?" Silas raised the rifle again. "Then I'll shoot you right now and tell everyone you died attacking my home, which is the truth. I'll do it. I'll write it all down." Dutch sagged with relief. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. You're still a dead man walking. Klein finds out you talked. He'll kill you himself. Your only hope is that we stop him first." Silas gestured to Tom. "Tie him up. Make sure he doesn't go anywhere. While Tom secured Dutch, Branna and Silas surveyed the damage. The cabin was a wreck, but it was still standing. The barn had taken a few bullets, but nothing structural. The chickens were going crazy, but they were alive. Bodies, though. Too many bodies. What do we do with them? Branna asked. Bury them. Away from the cabin. Silas sounded tired. It's dirty work, but it needs doing. They worked through the night, McCready and his nephews helping. They buried the dead in a ravine a half-mile from the cabin, marking it with stones so they'd remember where not to build. Some of the men they recognized, locals from Copper Hollow who'd gotten greedy. Others were strangers, hired guns who'd died for someone else's money. By dawn, it was done. Branna's hands were blistered from digging, her dress ruined with dirt and blood. She looked like she'd crawled through hell. Silas looked worse. The cut over his eye had stopped bleeding, but he had bruises forming and moved like his ribs hurt. They stood together on the porch, watching the sun rise over a battlefield-turned graveyard. How many did we kill? Branna asked quietly. 8, maybe 9. Hard to tell in the dark. Silas put his arm around her. How many did you? 3, I think. Branna's voice was steady. The one at the window, the one who grabbed me, and one in the yard. You did what you had to. I know. She looked at her hands, still shaking slightly. I thought I'd feel different, guilty or sick or something, but I just feel tired. That's normal. Guilt comes later, if it comes at all. Silas kissed the top of her head. You were brave tonight. Braver than I had any right to ask. I wasn't brave. I was terrified. That's what brave is, being terrified and fighting anyway. McCready emerged from the cabin carrying coffee. He'd cleaned up, but he still had blood on his shirt. Dutch finished his confession, he said, handing them cups. Signed it. Even gave us names of witnesses who can corroborate. If half of what he says is true, this Klein character's been planning this for months. What do we do about him? Branna asked. We take the confession to the marshal, file charges, make it public. McCready sipped his coffee. Klein's got money, but he doesn't have a defense against conspiracy to commit murder, especially not with multiple bodies as evidence. He'll lawyer up, buy his way out. Maybe, but at least he'll know we're not easy prey. Might make him think twice about trying again. McCready looked at them both seriously. You two need to decide something, though. Do you want to keep living like this? Always waiting for the next attack? Always wondering who's coming up that trail? Silas was quiet for a long moment. What's the alternative? Sell. Take the money and go somewhere easier. Somewhere safe. No. Branna's answer surprised even herself. This is our home. We built this. We fought for it. I'm not giving it up because some rich bastard thinks he deserves it more. Even with a baby coming? Even knowing men died here tonight and more might die tomorrow? Especially with a baby coming. Branna's hand went to her belly. I want our child to grow up knowing their parents didn't run. That we stood our ground and protected what was ours. That's worth more than safety. McCready smiled. Damn, Silas, you married well. I know. They spent the next week repairing the cabin. McCready and his nephews stayed to help, replacing windows and patching bullet holes. Dutch remained tied in the barn, fed and watered, but guarded constantly. On the 8th day, they rode down to Copper Hollow together, Silas, Branna, McCready, and Dutch. The nephews stayed behind to guard the property. The town's reaction was mixed. Some people looked at them with respect, others with fear. Everyone stared at Branna's pregnant belly and the rifle across her saddle. The marshal read Dutch's confession with growing horror. This is serious, he said finally. If Klein really did pay for an armed assault, he did, Dutch interrupted miserably. I got payment receipts, correspondence, everything. It's all there. Then I'll need to contact the territorial authorities. This is beyond my jurisdiction. The marshal looked at Silas. You know what this means? There'll be an investigation, questions, maybe a trial. Long as Klein ends up in prison or dead, I don't care about the rest. He's got powerful friends, Vorn. This won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is. The marshal promised to send word to Denver that afternoon. In the meantime, he locked Dutch in the town jail for his own protection. As they prepared to leave, a well-dressed man approached them. He was young, maybe 30, with expensive clothes and a lawyer's calculating eyes. Mr. Vaughan? Mrs. Vaughan? He extended his hand. My name's Harrison Wells. I'm an attorney from Denver. I heard about your situation and I'd like to help. How did you hear about it? Silas asked suspiciously. Word travels fast, especially when it involves someone like Edward Klein. Wells smiled. I've been trying to build a case against him for years. He's corrupt, ruthless, and he's gotten away with it because he pays the right people and scares the rest. But this, a conspiracy to commit murder with written evidence, this I can use. What's in it for you? Branna asked. Justice. And a chance to take down a man who's destroyed lives and gotten rich doing it. Wells's smile faded. My brother was one of Klein's victims. Lost everything in a land scheme. Drank himself to death over it. I've been waiting for a chance like this. Silas and Branna looked at each other. Branna nodded slightly. All right, Silas said. We'll work with you. But we're not leaving the mountain. Whatever happens, happens there. Understood. I'll come to you. Wells shook their hands. Thank you. You won't regret this. They rode back to Thunder Ridge in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The mountain looked different somehow, scarred but still standing, just like them. That night, after McCready and his nephews had finally gone home and the cabin was quiet again, Silas and Branna sat by the fire. You know this isn't over, Silas said quietly. Klein's not going to just accept being prosecuted. He'll fight back. I know. Could be months before there's a trial. Maybe longer. We'll have to be careful the whole time. I know that too. Branna leaned against him. I'm not scared anymore. Not like I was. No. Because I know now what I'm capable of. What we're capable of. She took his hand, pressing it to her belly where the baby kicked. 3 months ago, I was standing on a platform in town, being laughed at, being called worthless. Now I've fought off an army, and I'm carrying your child. That changes a person. It does. Silas kissed her temple. You've changed too. You're not the same woman I chose that day. Neither are you the same man. How am I different? You smile more, talk more. You're not hiding anymore. Branna turned to look at him. You're not the beast everyone said you were. You're just a man who wanted to be left alone. But now you're not alone, and you're handling it pretty well. Silas laughed, the sound rare and genuine. That's your standard? Handling it pretty well? Given that you married a stranger and got shot at for your trouble, I think pretty well is generous. They sat together watching the fire. Two people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances and made something good anyway. Outside, the mountain settled into night. Somewhere out there, Edward Klein was planning his next move. Somewhere, lawyers were drafting briefs and marshals were investigating. But here, in this cabin they defended with blood and bullets, Branna and Silas had already won the only fight that mattered. They'd chosen each other. Chosen this life. Chosen to stand and fight instead of running. And as the baby kicked beneath Branna's hand and Silas pulled her closer, she knew that whatever came next, they'd face it the same way they'd faced everything else. Together. The war wasn't over. But tonight, at least, they could rest. Tomorrow would bring new battles. But tomorrow could wait. Tomorrow came faster than either of them wanted. Harrison Wells arrived at Thunder Ridge 3 days later with news that made Silas's jaw tighten and Branna's stomach drop. Klein's disappeared, Wells said, accepting the coffee Branna offered. Left Denver 2 days ago. No one knows where he went. He's running, Silas said flatly. Maybe. Or he's regrouping. Wells pulled papers from his satchel. I've got warrants issued, but they're worthless if we can't find him. The territorial authorities are investigating, but without Klein in custody, it's just paperwork. So we wait, Branna said. Again. I'm afraid so, but I wanted you to know Dutch has been cooperating fully. He's given us names of other people Klein's defrauded. We're building a pattern of behavior. When we do catch him, the case will be solid. After Wells left, promising to return with updates, Silas and Branna went through the motions of their day, tending animals, checking perimeters, pretending everything was normal when they both knew it wasn't. He's coming here, Branna said that night. Klein. He's not running, he's planning something. I know. Silas cleaned his rifle for the 3rd time that day. Question is when and with how many men. We can't live like this forever, waiting, watching. Branna's hand rested on her belly, now round and obvious. She was 6 months along, and every day the baby's movements got stronger. What kind of life is this for a child? Growing up in a fortress, learning to shoot before they can read? Better than growing up without parents because we weren't prepared. Is it though? Branna moved to the window, staring out at the darkening mountain. Sometimes I think about just leaving, taking the silver we've already mined, going somewhere new, starting over where no one knows us. Silas set down the rifle and came to stand behind her. You don't mean that. Don't I? I'm tired, Silas. Tired of being afraid. Tired of sleeping with a gun next to the bed. Tired of wondering if today's the day someone tries to kill us again. That's not you talking, that's exhaustion. He turned her to face him. The woman who pointed a rifle at Dutch doesn't run. The woman who shot 3 men to protect her home doesn't quit. Maybe that woman was stupid. Maybe she should have run when she had the chance. Maybe. But she didn't. And you know why? Silas's voice was gentle. Because running doesn't solve anything. We'd just be looking over our shoulders in a different place. At least here we know the ground. We have friends. We have something worth fighting for. Branna wanted to argue, but he was right. She'd spent her whole life running from one disappointment to another. This was the first place she'd ever stood her ground. She wasn't about to start running now. The baby kicked hard, as if agreeing with Silas. Branna laughed despite herself. Your child is very opinionated, she said. Takes after both parents, then. Silas's hand joined hers on her belly. We're going to be all right, I promise you that. You can't promise that. Watch me. 2 weeks passed, then 3. The mountain settled into early winter, snow dusting the higher peaks. Branna's belly grew larger, her movement slower. Silas hovered like a nervous mother hen, which would have been annoying if it wasn't also kind of endearing. McCready visited regularly, always armed, always watching the trails. His nephews took turns staying at the cabin, extra eyes and guns in case trouble came calling. But trouble stayed away, and slowly, carefully, they started to believe it might actually be over. That's when Klein made his move. It wasn't a midnight raid or an armed assault. It was much smarter than that. A federal marshal arrived at Thunder Ridge on a cold November morning, accompanied by 2 deputies and a man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as Klein's attorney. Silas Vorn? The marshal was older, gray-haired, with eyes that had seen everything and weren't impressed by much. I'm Marshal Hendricks. I have a court order here requiring you to cease all mining operations pending investigation of your land claim. Silas read the papers carefully. This says my deed is fraudulent. That's the allegation? Yes. Mr. Klein's representatives have provided evidence suggesting the original deed was improperly filed. Until the territorial court can verify its authenticity, all mining activity must stop. That's bullshit, Branna said from the doorway. Our deed is 3 years old, properly filed and recorded. This is just Klein trying another way to steal our land. The lawyer smiled, all polish and no warmth. Mrs. Vorn, I understand you're upset, but the law is clear. If there's any question about the deed's validity, operations must cease until the matter is resolved. How convenient, McCready drawled from where he leaned against the porch railing. Klein can't take the mine by force, so he takes it by law. Same result. The law applies to everyone, Mr. McCready, even you. And how long is this investigation going to take? Silas asked, keeping his voice level, though Branna could see the tension in his shoulders. These things can take time, months, perhaps a year or more. The lawyer didn't look remotely sorry. In the meantime, if you're found to be mining in violation of this order, you'll be arrested and the property seized. Marshal Hendricks looked uncomfortable. For what it's worth, Mr. Vorn, I don't like this any more than you do. But it's a legitimate court order. I have to enforce it. I understand. Silas folded the papers carefully. We'll comply. But know this. We're not leaving this property. Court order or not, this is our home. No one's asking you to leave, just to stop mining until the legal issues are resolved. After they left, Silas stood on the porch staring at the mountains. Branna came to stand beside him, her hand finding his. He's trying to starve us out, she said quietly. Can't mine, can't sell silver, can't make money. Eventually we'll have to leave just to survive. We've got enough saved to last a while, and we can hunt, grow food. We're not helpless. But we are trapped. Branna's frustration boiled over. Don't you see? This is worse than the raid. At least then we could fight back. What do we do against lawyers and court orders? We fight with lawyers and court orders of our own. Silas turned to her. Harrison Wells knows the law. We'll get him up here, figure out our options. There's got to be something. Wells arrived 2 days later, and the news he brought wasn't encouraging. Klein's smart, the lawyer admitted, spreading papers across their kitchen table. He's found a technicality in how the original claim was filed. The surveyor who marked your boundaries apparently wasn't properly licensed at the time. It's a minor issue, easily resolved, but Klein's lawyers are using it to call the entire deed into question. Can they do that? Branna asked. They're doing it. Whether it'll hold up in court is another matter. Wells tapped the papers. The problem is time. Klein knows you can't mine while this is pending. He's betting you'll either give up or run out of money before the courts rule in your favor. How long are we talking? 6 months at minimum, probably closer to a year. Silas swore. We can last that long, but it'll be tight. And if the baby comes early, if there are complications, we'll manage, Branna interrupted. We always do. There might be another way. Wells looked at them both seriously. We could go public, tell your story to the newspapers. Make this about more than just a property dispute. Frame it as a powerful man trying to steal from honest settlers. Public opinion can be powerful, especially in territorial courts. You want us to become a story? Branna asked. I want you to control the story before Klein does. Right now, he's painting you as squatters on disputed land. We need to paint him as a corrupt businessman trying to steal from a pregnant woman and her husband. Which version do you think plays better? Silas and Branna looked at each other. It wasn't a comfortable option. Neither of them wanted to be public spectacles, but it might be their only real weapon. Do it, Silas said. Tell the story. The article appeared in the Denver Chronicle 2 weeks later, written by a young reporter named Sarah Mitchell, who traveled to Thunder Ridge to interview them. She'd been thorough and sympathetic, detailing Branna's journey from mail-order bride to mountain wife, the confrontation with Dutch, the midnight raid, and now Klein's legal maneuvering to steal their land while Branna was pregnant. The headline read, Pregnant Woman Defends Home Against Corrupt Businessmen's Plot. The story spread like wildfire. Other newspapers picked it up. Letters poured into the Chronicle's office, most supporting Branna and Silas. A few supporting Klein, but those were clearly written by people on his payroll. Public opinion turned sharply against Klein. His business associates started distancing themselves. The territorial governor made noises about investigating his land dealings, and then inevitably, Klein struck back. The article appeared in a rival newspaper, painting Branna as a fortune hunter who'd manipulated a simple mountain man. It claimed Silas was dangerously unstable, that he'd killed men in Denver and fled to the wilderness, that the mine didn't even exist, that the whole thing was a scheme to defraud investors. The lies were transparent, but they did damage anyway. Doubt crept into some of the supportive letters. Questions were raised. This is what he does, Wells explained during his next visit. He muddies the water until no one knows what's true. Then he uses the confusion to slip through legal loopholes. So what do we do? Branna was 8 months pregnant now, moving slowly, her back constantly aching. The baby had dropped, meaning labor could come any time. We stay the course. Keep telling the truth. Eventually, the court will rule on the deed's validity. When they do, if it's in our favor, Klein loses everything. And if it's not in our favor, Wells was quiet. Then we find another way to fight. Christmas came and went quietly. McCready brought them a small tree, which Branna decorated with paper ornaments and strings of popcorn. It was nothing like the Christmases she remembered from childhood, but somehow it felt more real. On Christmas Eve, as they sat by the fire, Branna felt the first contraction. She didn't say anything at first, thinking it might be false labor, but when the second one hit 20 minutes later, she knew. Silas, she said calmly, the baby's coming. He went white. Now? Right now? Probably not right this second, but soon. They'd prepared as best they could. McCready's wife, Martha, had agreed to come help when the time came. She was waiting at McCready's cabin, ready to ride at a moment's notice. Tom volunteered to make the ride, leaving within minutes. Silas and Branna were left alone, timing contractions, trying to stay calm. I'm scared, Branna admitted during a break between pains. What if something goes wrong? What if the baby... Nothing's going wrong. Martha's delivered dozens of babies. You're strong. The baby's strong. We're going to be fine. But Silas looked as scared as Branna felt. Martha arrived an hour later, calm and competent. She took one look at Branna and started issuing orders, turning the cabin into a delivery room with practiced efficiency. First babies take their time, she told them. Could be hours yet. Silas, get water boiling. Branna, you walk. Movement helps. The labor stretched through the night. Branna walked until she couldn't, then paced, then finally had to lie down as the contractions grew stronger and closer together. Silas held her hand through it all, letting her squeeze until his fingers went white. He wiped her forehead with cool cloths, whispered encouragement, looked utterly helpless in the face of her pain. I can't do this, Branna gasped during a particularly brutal contraction. It's too much. I can't. You can, Martha said firmly. You've fought off armed men. You've defended your home. You can damn well push out one baby. That's different. It's not different. It's all pain, all work, all worth it when it's done. Now stop whining and push. So Branna pushed. She pushed until she thought she'd split in two. Pushed until she couldn't remember a time when she wasn't in pain. Pushed until finally, impossibly, Martha said the word she'd been waiting for. I see the head. One more push, Branna. One more, and you're done. Branna gathered everything she had left and pushed. The baby slid into the world with a cry that made Branna's heart stop and start again. Martha caught the tiny, bloody thing and quickly cleared its mouth and nose. It's a girl, Martha announced, wrapping the baby in clean cloth. Healthy lungs on this one. Silas was crying. Big, tough Silas, who'd killed men and never flinched, was crying as he looked at his daughter. Martha placed the baby in Branna's arms, and the world narrowed to that tiny, perfect face. She had Silas's eyes already, pale gray and serious. A shock of dark hair, tiny fists waving angrily at being expelled from her warm home. Hello, Branna whispered. I'm your mother. The baby stopped crying, focusing on Branna's face like she knew exactly who was speaking. She's perfect, Silas breathed. She's absolutely perfect. She's also going to need a name, Martha pointed out. Can't just call her baby forever. Branna and Silas looked at each other. They'd discussed names, but never settled on one. Now, holding their daughter, the answer seemed obvious. Hope, Branna said. Her name is Hope. Why Hope? Silas asked. Because that's what she is. Hope that things can get better, that we can build something good out of all this pain. Branna kissed her daughter's forehead. Hope that the future's worth fighting for. Silas kissed them both, his family, and nodded. Hope Vorn. I like it. The baby, Hope, spent her first night in a cradle Silas had built months ago, sleeping between contractions of hunger and dirty diapers. Branna was exhausted but couldn't stop looking at her, couldn't believe this tiny person had come from her body. McCready visited the next morning, bringing gifts and congratulations. He held Hope with surprising gentleness, his grizzled face softening. She's going to be trouble, he predicted. Look at that stubborn chin. That's a fighter if I ever saw one. She'll have to be, Branna said. The world's not kind to women. Better she learns to fight early. The world's not kind to anyone, McCready corrected, but she's got good parents. That's more than most kids get. 2 weeks after Hope's birth, Harrison Wells arrived with news. The court ruled, he said, and Branna's heart stopped. In your favor. Silas caught Branna before she could collapse from relief. The deed is valid, Wells continued, grinning. The surveyor issue was irrelevant. The territorial governor himself signed off on your claim 3 years ago. Klein's lawyers tried every trick they had, but the judge saw through it. He called it a frivolous lawsuit designed to harass honest citizens. So we can mine again? Silas asked. You can mine again. And better yet, Klein's been charged with conspiracy to commit fraud. Between this and Dutch's testimony about the raid, he's facing serious prison time. Where is he? Branna asked. Still hiding? Actually, federal marshals picked him up in Kansas City 2 days ago. He was trying to board a train to California. Wells's smile turned sharp. He'll be tried in Denver in 2 months. I'll be prosecuting personally. After Wells left, Silas and Branna stood on the porch holding their daughter, looking out at the mountain that was finally, legally, undeniably theirs. We did it, Branna said softly. We actually did it. You sound surprised. I am. I spent so long losing that I forgot what winning felt like. Silas kissed her temple. Better get used to it. We've got a mind to run, a daughter to raise, and a mountain to protect. Winning's going to have to become a habit. The trial happened in March, when Hope was 3 months old. Branna and Silas traveled to Denver to testify, leaving Hope with Martha McCready. The courtroom was packed. Klein sat at the defense table looking smaller than Branna had imagined, his expensive suit unable to hide the fact that he was just a greedy man who'd gotten caught. Branna testified about the raids, the fear, the legal harassment. Silas testified about the conspiracy, the hired guns, the attempt to steal their land. Dutch testified about Klein's payments and plans, his voice shaking but clear. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. They found Klein guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in federal prison and ordered him to pay restitution to all his victims, including Silas and Branna. Walking out of that courtroom, Branna felt something lift from her shoulders, a weight she'd been carrying so long she'd forgotten it was there. "It's really over," she said to Silas. "It's really over." They returned to Thunder Ridge to find spring had come early. The snow was melting, wildflowers pushing through the thawing ground. Hope had learned to smile in their absence, and she greeted them with gummy grins that made everything they'd been through worthwhile. Life settled into a rhythm. Silas worked the mine carefully, taking only what they needed, being smart about the future. Branna kept the books and managed their money, turning Silas's silver into investments that would support Hope's future. McCready became Hope's honorary grandfather, teaching her to track animals before she could walk. Martha taught Branna about mountain plants, which ones healed and which ones killed. The cabin expanded. Silas built an addition for Hope's room, then another for the workshop Branna wanted. They built a better barn, a larger garden, a root cellar that could store food for years. More settlers came to Thunder Ridge, drawn by news of silver and opportunities. Some failed and left. Others stayed and built. Slowly, a community formed, people who valued independence and hard work, who looked after their neighbors and asked for the same in return. On Hope's first birthday, they threw a party. McCready and his family came. Wells traveled from Denver. Even the new marshal from Copper Hollow showed up with his wife and children. Branna watched her daughter take her first wobbly steps, watched Silas catch her when she stumbled, watched a room full of people celebrate this life they'd built. She thought about this woman she'd been a year and a half ago, standing on a platform being called worthless. That woman would never have believed this was possible. But that woman had gotten on a horse and ridden into the wilderness with a stranger, had learned to shoot and fight and stand her ground, had become someone new, someone stronger, someone who didn't need anyone's approval to know her worth. That night, after Hope was asleep and the guests had gone home, Branna and Silas sat on their porch watching the stars. "Do you ever regret it?" Branna asked, "choosing me that day?" "Never. Not once." Silas pulled her closer. "Best decision I ever made." "Even with all the trouble it brought?" "Especially because of the trouble. Easy choices don't change your life. Hard ones do." He looked at her seriously. "You changed mine. Made me remember what it was like to care about someone, to fight for something bigger than just survival. You changed mine too. Gave me a reason to be strong, a reason to stay and fight instead of running. We changed each other then. Fair trade." Branna laughed. "Very fair." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances and made something beautiful anyway. The mountains stretched around them, wild and dangerous in theirs. Hope cried from inside, probably a nightmare. Silas started to get up, but Branna stopped him. "I'll get her. You've been working all day." "So have you." "I don't mind." Branna kissed him quickly. "Besides, I want to." She went inside and picked up her daughter, rocking her gently until the crying stopped. Hope settled against Branna's shoulder with a sigh, already falling back asleep. Looking at her daughter's peaceful face, Branna thought about all the women who'd been on that platform with her, the pretty ones who'd been chosen first. Where were they now? Were they happy? Did they have homes that felt like fortresses and husbands who fought beside them instead of in front of them? It didn't matter. They'd gotten what they wanted. Branna had gotten what she needed. She'd gotten a partner, a home, a purpose. She'd gotten a life worth living. And that, Branna thought, as she laid Hope back in her cradle, was worth every moment of fear and pain and struggle. Because the truth was simple. People spent their whole lives looking for someone who'd see them as they really were and choose them anyway. Most never found it. Some gave up looking. But Branna had been lucky. She'd been chosen by a man who saw her completely, her anger, her stubbornness, her fear, her strength, and wanted her because of it, not in spite of it. That was rare. That was precious. That was worth fighting for. She returned to the porch where Silas waited and settled back into his arms. The mountain night was cold, but they were warm together. "She went back down easy?" Silas asked, like she was waiting for an excuse to cuddle. Smart kid, gets that from her mother. Stubbornness from her father. Fighting spirit from both of us. Poor child, Branna said, but she was smiling. Doesn't stand a chance of being normal. Normal's overrated. We proved that. They had proven it. Two people who didn't fit anywhere else had built a place where they fit perfectly, had taken the pieces of themselves that others called broken and made something whole. That was the real story, Branna realized. Not the silver or the raids or the courtroom drama. Those were just the obstacles they'd overcome. The story was about two people learning that being unwanted by everyone else meant nothing if you found the one person who wanted you completely. It was about choosing yourself when the world tried to choose for you. It was about standing your ground even when the ground was trying to shake you off. It was about love that wasn't pretty or poetic, but was real and solid and built to last. Years later, when Hope was old enough to ask questions, Branna would tell her this story. Would tell her about being the leftover bride, about her father choosing strength over beauty, about fighting for what was theirs. And she'd tell Hope the most important lesson she'd learned. Your worth isn't determined by who wants you. It's determined by what you do when you're unwanted, how you stand, how you fight, how you refuse to let someone else's opinion become your truth. Because Branna had been called worthless, unwanted, too much of the wrong things, and she'd proven them all wrong by building a life that mattered, not despite being the one nobody chose, but because she chose herself. And in the end, that was the only choice that really mattered. The stars wheeled overhead, constant and ancient. The mountains stood solid beneath them. Hope slept peacefully inside. And Branna Vorn, once Branna Hale, formerly the leftover bride, sat with her husband and knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. She'd found her place. She'd found her person. She'd found herself. And that was worth more than all the silver in the mountain.